Our hero attempts strolling into the rookie town just like any normal player. However, the mainframe instantly undergoes a massive digital meltdown. Massive glitch notifications pop up, flashing angry scarlet alerts. The UI claims he ignored the usual legal steps and acquired experience points via extremely suspicious methods. This broken code begins forcibly deleting every single hard-earned rank. Our protagonist shrieks like some banshee while 2 decades of miserable farming vanish into thin air instantly. Once the digital dust finally clears, he peeks at his character sheet once more. His attributes remain absolutely ridiculously overpowered. Maximum stats everywhere except his trash luck. Merely his numerical rank dropped to the starting point. Thanks to these errors, various abilities stay disabled and rare gear acts totally broken. Frankly, the dude is totally unbothered. Given these monstrous numbers, grinding back up feels trivial. In his eyes, this remains a massive victory. Thus the traveler unfurls the chart and marks his route. That rookie spawn zone named Urkus. One might ponder how that rank sat so absurdly elevated right from the start. See, 2 decades back, while that tiny sprout wandered near a hero school, some deranged geezer snatched him up. Truly, simply shamelessly nabbed the youngster once he concluded. The toddler was a prodigy. That elderly jerk craves raw strength, transforming the child into that private experiment. Zero compassion, zero pauses, merely ruthless spirit, breaking drills every single afternoon. Endless floor presses with that fossil riding his spine, constant suffering, while enduring endless yapping regarding numeric values and boring attributes. Amidst a particularly savage beating, Horhan remarks how the reigning global champion sits at a measly 89 according to the leaderboard. However, the geezer just cackled, ladling such figures utter garbage. In his warped mind, peasants below level 90 remain invisible nobodies. Every time Hun questions things, a fist greets his tiny noggin, forcing a fresh round of misery. A decade evaporates. Eventually 20 young hen matures inside this dumpster fire, baffled why he never simply uninstalled Lie. Finally the ancient fossil claims his wisdom is fully transferred, so he can finally kick the bucket. Our hero fakes being a devoted, grieving relative for show, praying for a secret mission prompt when the non-player character expires. Success arrives. That wrinkly corpse, to he provides coordinates linked directly to his destiny. Exudes a spooky, godly vibe, then bites the dust. Thus ends Hun's 2-decade residency in the Academy of Physical Trauma. Returning to the current timeline, Hun navigates back into the starting town square because the game engine nerfed him down to level 1. Hun enters Urkus, reeling from the fact that 20 years vanished like magic. He scans the surroundings, observing the courtyard where he once frolicked as a toddler. Peddlers push their overpriced junk, while locals occupy themselves with snacks. As the hub vibrates with energy, that calm atmosphere triggering warm memories, highlighting the massive hole in his heart for this simple life. Returning home feels absolutely incredible, so without dawdling for even a second, he pivots, sprinting toward the monster zones by departing via the western portal. Just as he got close to the entryway, a rather large bouncer stepped in to block his way. The guard wanted to know his current power rating. He sheepishly confessed to being just level 1, which felt pretty pathetic for a 26-year-old man. This stopped the guard cold, so he pointed out that since the guy was clearly a beginner, he ought to use the east gate. He mentioned that this side of town, the west gate, was basically a death trap for anyone so low level. Hun inquired if this specific area was off limits, but the guard responded that nobody was actually stopping him. He simply wouldn't advise it for a newcomer, because at level 1, he'd probably get completely obliterated by a bloodthirsty bunny. The guard kept pushing him toward the east side training grounds, yet he merely smirked confidently, deciding he could handle himself here. He ignored the advice and walked ahead, while the guard let out an audible groan. He knew this youngster was determined not to listen. The guard guessed he probably believed he could simply resurrect after getting killed. However, this still felt like an incredibly dumb risk to take. Just then, a quest prompt materialized in his user interface, making him understand the guard truly was anxious for his safety. Since he had already committed to the mission, he figured it was time to make a scene for his worried audience. He offered a nonchalant wait. Right on cue, a fanged rabbit bounded forward to attack him. The guard screamed for him to move, lunging forward, but he simply delivered one tranquil punch that utterly destroyed it. This resulted in an immediate experience point increase. The guard completely froze in place, utterly dumbfounded, pondering exactly what kind of reality-bending nonsense had just occurred. The guard thought, wait, didn't this dude just say he was level 1? And Han simply confirmed it with a nod. He figured the guard's system ought to have automatically sensed his level anyway. The guard insisted he could absolutely detect levels, but added that this situation went against all logic. He started to speculate about what sort of unbelievable cheat codes this kid was using. Han simply continued smiling like a complete simpleton, deciding to keep his powerful nature hidden for now. Suddenly, a huge, infuriated boar emerged from nowhere, charging right toward their position. The guard's face turned sheet white, shouting for the kid to fall back, but Han stood firm, smirking nonchalantly as if to say relax, this is fine. The guard realized the beast was extremely dangerous, but Han clearly couldn't care less about the seriousness of the situation. He proceeded to connect his fist directly with the boar's face. The monster instantly folded, handing him another level, up like it was loose change. The guard watched in disbelief, his brain struggling to understand how a novice player pulled this off. He muttered that Han must be completely unhinged. Honestly, at this point, who could deny it? Han casually pocketed the 30 gold reward he earned from that laughably simple quest. It felt incredibly satisfying, bordering on defying. His true stats were sitting pretty at 99 across the board, so he figured he could worry about the minor details later. For now, he decided to visit a far more challenging hunting ground, letting out a chuckle as he strolled away. He felt like his life had finally escaped the prison of constant misery and dread. 20 brutal years of hard work were finally paying dividends. He wished for smooth sailing from now on, but fate decided to throw him a curveball just a few days later. He was quickly pulled into a ridiculous situation, making his eyes narrow as he internally grumbled, what the hell is this nonsense? A system notification flash, falsely claiming he had committed murder, activating the entire chaos protocol. He was instantly branded with a killer's mark that everyone could see. Just a few days after everything began, he had been sucked into random events that escalated into completely absurd misunderstandings. Suddenly, NPCs started appearing from thin air to attack him, each one convinced he was a notorious criminal with a huge price tag on his head. Then he realized it. This entire catastrophe was thanks to his atrocious -99 luck stat. Thanks to his terrible luck stat, every NPC out there was absolutely convinced that he was the actual criminal mastermind. One NPC even ambushed him from behind, forcing him to react purely by instinct. He instinctively fought back, killing the attacker instantly. He never intended to kill anybody. He was simply fighting to survive this mess. But of all the chaotic scenarios possible, this one turned out to be the absolute worst possible situation. The system immediately threw him into a max chaotic state, applying a ridiculous amount of penalties. He knew he was completely doomed now that not just NPCs, but actual players were also hunting him down. The players chasing him were yelling his name, ladling him get rocked, the infamous serial killer. He sprinted through the streets, absolutely bewildered as to why everyone was giving him that title. Killing a chaotic user like him grants a person hero status, which meant something big was happening. Every single wannabe hero was completely focused on hunting him down, thanks to his maximum chaotic status. He eventually found himself cornered, completely surrounded by players with nowhere left to go. They told him he was finished, and suggested he surrender quietly. Giving up wasn't even an option for him, so he turned around, his eyes turning cold and dangerous. Out of nowhere, an enormous explosion tore through the atmosphere, making a dramatic entrance. The resulting shockwave instantly eliminated every last participant in the vicinity. He didn't feel a shred of remorse for his actions, justifying them as purely necessary for survival, and then he departed. He immediately went into hiding to evade detection, grateful that those simpletons had at least provided a beneficial experience boost. After a fortnight passed, he found himself secluded deep inside the overgrown jungle foliage. He reviewed his maximum chaotic penalty, discovering he would need to stay off the grid for 12 months before the extreme chaos debuff vanished. He reasoned that if he was stuck with the villain title, he might as well embrace a lifestyle of fine dining and luxurious living arrangements. The concept of becoming a hero was immediately discarded, especially since all of his character statistics had already reached the maximum level of 99. There truly was nothing left to concern himself with. Yet a new realization began to surface in his thoughts. He realized the dark humor in having spent 2 decades subjected to brutal hardships and non-stop physical conditioning. The automated system had thrown this disaster upon him, precisely when he thought his fortune was beginning to improve. He was cast into a maximum chaotic state without even a courtesy notification, and he was completely convinced of the reason. Zeus definitely had his fingerprints on this situation, as the divine nuisance was likely preparing a custom-made, twisted special event for him. Waking up the next morning, he immediately saw a sight so completely nonsensical that he almost burst out laughing. An entire congregation of individuals was kneeling respectfully directly in front of him. His head started spinning. He genuinely had no idea what kind of bizarre event was unfolding now. One particularly tearful elder announced with great emotion that laying eyes upon the lineage of the supreme sovereign meant his life's purpose was fulfilled and he could now die in peace. Welcoming him as the Sky Devil's absolute sovereign, he remained frozen in shock, pondering what new insanity this was, when suddenly a system notification materialized before his eyes. Class Quest appeared, confirming that the system had recognized him officially as the absolute ruler of the Sky Devil faction, without further inquiry. Class missions stand as the absolute zenith of all tasks known to the entire population. Across the entire 2-century timeline of Olympus, only 3 instances of these missions had ever been documented. Considering such immense repercussions, it was logical that NCIS Quest's central narrative would always escalate to a national or even global scale. He took a moment to reflect, questioning why exactly this monumental responsibility had been bestowed upon him, as he observed every non-player character performing a deep bow, as though they had spent their entire existence anticipating his appearance. He realized he had become ensnared in an extensive saga that Zeus had been secretly constructing around him for 2 full decades. Han started reviewing historical documents that described a massive period of chaos lasting 7,000 years. Following the conclusion of the conflict, peace was restored, resulting in the world being sectioned into 3 opposing groups. The most prominent among these factions was Centenia, which was governed by an authoritarian figure named Graciamentos. He was married 14 times, and his 7th wife bore him a male child. This cycle of procreation continued, ensuring the family tree just kept growing, like a very persistent weed. However, with all these geezers kneeling before him, he quickly deduced that skipping this ritual would likely be seen as terribly impolite. He keeps flipping through the pages, finding out all about the heiress top dog, Shurdara, who eventually climbed the crazy pole to total command. Shurdara, having consumed a fiend's essence, became brutally strong and utterly ruthless, making every hero on the planet shake in their boots just hearing his name. Despite all that power, he was taken down during an uprising using a classic Oni trap, which meant he was simply beaten, not actually killed off. Following this humiliation, Shurdara promptly retreated to a dark cave to begin the process of rebuilding his power base. Han has a light bulb moment, realizing his old teacher is a direct family member of this infamous Shurdara. The system relentlessly provides directions, meticulously detailing every requirement he must fulfill to finally conclude the task. Han believes his next destination should be Seoul. He pivots to address the old gentleman, asking them directly if they are genuinely the Sky Devil elders he's hearing about. The head elder slams his forehead onto the floor in reverence, proudly declaring that they absolutely are, offering thanks to Han for identifying them. But the funny part is, our protagonist actually just wants to escape this absurd mission, having genuinely never heard a single thing about these individuals. Han fabricates a tale, claiming his master specifically instructed him to lead the Sky Devil elders and restore their ancient prestige throughout the entire continent. The old men immediately burst into tears, gratefully bowing their heads in overwhelming happiness. Han realizes this group represents the 7 elders, who are now completely and utterly dedicated to him. He instructs one specific individual from the group to step forward and take command. The elder stands tall and reports to Han that he has already eliminated all those annoying, insect-like scoundrels who were hovering around, trying to end him. As soon as he officially links up with the elders and joins their ranks, his physical form illuminates, instantly boosting his level to 9. Han begins to ponder what sort of truly terrifying enemies these powerful elders must have previously vanquished. Han addresses one elder and inquires about his identity, to which the senior individual responds that his name is Luk, proudly serving as the first elder. Han tells him there's a specific action required, and Luk bows again, respectfully requesting Han to issue the instruction. Han clarifies that he is currently restricted by a unique magical constraint. Despite having diligently followed all his master's advice, he cannot perform his master's techniques. His brain retains all the knowledge, but his physical form remains completely unresponsive. The elder simply nods in understanding, explaining that he had already anticipated this precise situation. Han quickly reassures the group, instructing them to place their full confidence in him, since he stands as their absolute and unchallenged leader. He vows to lead all the assembled elders toward the location bathed in eternal sunlight. The old men start making ready for departure, formally addressing Han as their new master. While the system informs him that the Sky Devil's loyalty score has improved, Han flashes a confident grin and decides that the moment has arrived to commence their journey toward the final objective. Meanwhile, in the actual world beyond the game interface, Han makes a break for the kitchen to find a much-needed jolt of coffee, and accidentally runs straight into his sister, Han Seo. She boasted about a successful mission her guild had just completed, mentioning a notorious serial killer named Gitrok operating near Centenia. Hun pretended to have no knowledge of this specific killer, despite actually being the exact person she described. His sister elaborated further, noting the murderer typically wielded dual pistols and possessed a combat level around 40. She claimed to have heard rumors that he could easily wipe out an entire 7-member party single-handedly. She then explained that the incentive for apprehending this individual was 3 million gold. Hun found this peculiar, questioning why she only mentioned 3 million when the official bounty was actually 100 million. She blushed in embarrassment, stammering about all the perks her union provided, a justification Hun considered utter nonsense. Han knew she and her friends were doing all the hard work, but his sister just laughed it off, promising to treat him to barbecue if she ever secured the reward. Han offered his thanks, then made the decision to log back into the game world. Back in Olympus, Lucco immediately informed him that they were being followed by an unknown presence. Han suggested they first identify the source of the surveillance, attempting to send an in-game message to his sister for help. However, she was on a completely different continent, so the communication failed, ruling her out as the potential tail. Suddenly, a suspicious figure emerged from behind Han. It turned out to be the real Gatrock, who immediately started insulting Han for impersonating him, leaving Han momentarily confused. The moment he saw the 2 pistols in the man's hands, Han realized this was no joke. This was the legitimate, infamous fugitive. The actual criminal was absolutely enraged by Han's act of identity theft and vowed to exact revenge by ending his life. Han actually felt a little relieved that his sister had already filled him in on this particular character. While his personal stats were relatively high, the adversary was still a formidable level 40. Han contemplated the outcome of facing someone with a 30-level gap in power. He responded with an evil smirk, reminding himself that he wasn't exactly alone in this confrontation. He called upon Loxo, the first older, who appeared instantly in response to the summons. The criminal froze in astonishment, unable to understand where this old man came from, and having failed to detect his approach. Han gave the simple, direct command to kill. Detra, still arrogant despite the circumstances, scoffed that he would simply kill both of them instead. But Lucco moved with such incredible velocity that he simply vanished from his position in a blur. Before Gatrock could even finish his boast, his head was already cleanly separated from his body and lying on the ground. Lucco calmly returned his sword to its scabbard, while Han remained frozen in a state of absolute shock. Han remembered that Gatrock was supposed to be at least level 40, leading him to wonder about the implications of the swift defeat. He couldn't help but question whether Lucco was simply god-tier powerful or if the criminal had been severely overrated. Our protagonist, Han, experienced genuine mortification for failing to even perceive Lucco's swift actions. Nonetheless, he remained assured that with his own visual perception abilities, things would be quite different. Possessing proper visual acuity, he supposed, would simplify understanding Mana's currents. Subsequently, the venerable elder presented him the malefactor's grim, severed noggin, as his digital interface then awarded him a bounty of experience points. This windfall included the entire sum of 100 million gleaming gold. Such was the lavish recompense for dispatching the notoriously infamous serial killer, and utterly unpleasant individual. Our protagonist then lavished compliments upon the venerable elder, subsequently pondering the profound shifts in his circumstances. Earlier, procuring even minor employment proved impossible, solely owing to his maximum chaotic alignment. Our hero, Han, executed an absolutely brilliant display, fully intending to embrace any unfolding narrative or mission the digital system saw fit to present to him. Additionally, he committed his absolute utmost to this grand odyssey, intending to eventually secure a sovereign's throne. Subsequently, a fortnight elapsed. Our protagonist, Han, ambled through the verdant wilderness, as the surrounding venerable figures handily dispatched all manner of adversaries or wild creatures that dared obstruct our young man's path. That fellow, Han, presently accomplished rank 13. This represents an absolutely astounding velocity, especially considering rivals commonly invest several years to achieve this extent of advancement. He possesses a particular ability, humorously named the Heaven-Breaking Ghost Art, which mandates an attainment of at least level 40. Consequently, reaching the 40th tier is precisely when the true adventure will genuinely commence for our protagonist. Our hero contemplates his elderly companions. Surmassing their operation resembles a corporate entity, acquiring artifacts through absolute, relentless exertion, rapid tier advancement, aided by infernal lackeys. Currently, his attention shifted to the satchel holding the villain's detached cranium, and he puzzled over its proper utilization. Back in the tangible realm, Han booted up his digital device, seeking out optimal venues for offloading valuable commodities. A digital missive suggested liquidating it within the virtual realm of Olympus. While others concurred with this recommendation, Han recalled his complete inability to access any public establishments. This limitation stemmed from his maximum chaotic alignment within the game's universe. Furthermore, the virtual realm's currency, toll, possessed no tangible value in the physical dimension, and his private data faced potential exposure or that. Abruptly, his sibling materialized, displaying a radiant grin. Our protagonist considered her perfectly punctual, while she, curious, pondered the unfolding situation. Perhaps, she speculated, her brother required a small financial advance. Yet he, flushing slightly, sheepishly explained that was not the case. He then inquired about her intentions should he bestow upon her the malefactor's cranium. Initially perplexed, she burst into hearty laughter, questioning why that fellow would ever present such a thing to her, even if it were truly in his possession. She then waggishly suggested he simply purchase a burgher, should he genuinely possess the villain's detached cranium, and perhaps, that individual could procure another for her, as well. Subsequently, he adopted a grave demeanor, proposing an equitable 50-50 split, all while she remained utterly. Noticing his grave demeanor, Sia promptly reminded him that Gitruk's standing literally registered as the 40th tier. Sia believed that even if that fellow somehow resurrected, he would still be incapable of dispatching the lawbreaker. She had moreover been told he was confined to specific locations due to his subpar training regimen. Nevertheless, Han apprised his sibling that he had absconded a handful of days earlier, and truthfully, he had recently secured the villain, a declaration, which utterly astonished that relative. His sister then reiterated that the lawbreaker's advancement registered at tier 40, proving how our hero could possibly have eliminated that individual, and, with a bashful chuckle, started to articulate his response. That crook bit the dust upon punching a dude with a hidden max rank, subsequently prompting the brother to mention the digital receipt sent earlier. A decade ago, she recalls obtaining a notification from her bro stating he hit max rank, causing her to assume he was just joking around. During modern times, the lady provides a bashful smile while admitting her belief that the image was faked, but the man cares not for her skepticism. The sibling commands his relative for traveling into those Centennia peaks for the villain's noggin, vowing to transmit precise Geeps data upon her entry. The lady wonders why on earth she must travel to some random patch of trees for his benefit. Consequently, the sibling mentions his peak outlaw status, a revelation that drains every ounce of pigment from her complexion. Inside the digital realm, the girl arrives at the west exit, informing those sentries of her upcoming chores within the Alpine region. However, they attempt to block the path because she might be turned into a quick snack by some hungry beasts. She giggles nervously and ignores every single piece of their cautious suggestions. The guards persist in blocking the path, yet she simply gestures farewell while walking into the overgrown forest. After wandering for 3 full hours inside that thick tropical growth, the surroundings feel eerily devoid of any noise. Additionally, the girl recollects how her kin pledged to slaughter every foul creature in the zone ahead of time. Glancing around, she notices it is not just the predators, but every biological entity has vanished. Suddenly, Han pops up right behind her, causing Sia to howl in total fright. She feels spooked by him and asks why he failed to make any noise while approaching her. Additionally, the lady perceives a remarkably heavy vibe radiating from her kin like a storm. A sudden realization hits that the guy truly spoke the truth regarding his extreme outlaw reputation. She begins questioning whether he actually murdered a non-player character. Nevertheless, the male relative entirely overlooks that specific inquiry. Instead, he hands her the pouch containing the bandit's skull with 100 million gold prize attached. The lady feels utterly stunned, questioning the reality of the situation while staring at the enormous treasure within her palms. Once the lady accepts this truth, she immediately inquires regarding his method for success. While praising his incredible talent, the guy simply desires for his kin to hasten the trade, teasingly threatening her life should the girl vanish with that reward. Once at the mercenary hall, the girl delivers the item. One of the employees verifies the identity of the target, obtaining the rogue's remains. Consequently, the mission to execute the felon is finished, and the girl still feels paralyzed with shock. That massive 9-figure currency prize gets distributed, prompting the girl to envision purchasing endless fast food by keeping a half portion. Yet quite surprisingly, the siblings' exertion proved effective. The male toiled extremely rigorously, hence such exhausting endeavors are at last yielding massive dividends. Returning to the jungle, she presented her brother with his portion of the loot. Han quickly observed that his half somehow amounted to 99 million gold, significantly more than the expected 50 million. Though initially puzzled by the overpayments, he swiftly rationalized that a grueling 2 decades of training surely entitled him to such a generous bonus. He even considered refusing the excess. However, he ultimately kept 1 million, as a small token of gratitude to her, referring to the amount as his pocket money for the day. He tried to offer her more of the wealth, but she completely ignored him, turning on her heel and immediately sprinting away. Yelling over her shoulder that she only had the morning free for this quest, she promised Hamburger's lair as she fled, leaving him momentarily speechless in her dust. She extended an invitation for him to join her and their parents for dinner, prompting Han to smile warmly and wish her a safe return from her real-life exploits. Han calculated the exchange rate for the 99 million gold, discovering that after all the fees and taxes, it amounted to roughly 80 million and won in actual currency. Earning such a fortune on his very first attempt solidified his belief that this quest was his life's true calling, making him completely ignore the fact that he was a max chaotic character. The CS class quest hadn't even commenced, yet he was already rolling in cash, sitting on a real world fortune of 80 million, which served as collateral. He could only speculate about the immense rewards waiting for him upon completing the main storyline, and his immediate goal became reaching level 40 as quickly as possible to unlock the next steps. To achieve this goal, he had to accelerate his progression, meaning every minute and every second of game time was now vital. Later that evening, Han met with his sister in the real world, needing her assistance because, due to his max chaotic status, there were certain tasks he couldn't personally handle in the game. He requested that she purchase specific in-game items for him. She initially declined, citing exhaustion from her job, until he sweetened the deal with a conditional promise. He offered her a monthly allowance of 300,001, to which she promptly agreed, then countered with a request for 500,001 instead, proving she was a shrewd negotiator. After reaching a compromise, the deal was struck, and Sia immediately logged back into the virtual world. Several hours later, completely exhausted from the game grind, Han finally began testing the new clothing and equipment his sister had acquired for him. These items were essentially high-value gear designed to significantly boost his experience points earning rate. The only real-world problem was the exorbitant cost. Everything he'd purchased totaled a whopping 70 million won, which he had earned for the first time in his life. He felt a sense of pride from earning the cash himself, while his sister remained entirely disinterested in his overarching objectives. All she really cared about was getting her cut of the profits for running all those errands on his behalf. She completely destroyed his expectations by demanding a hefty fee, 3 million gold for the initial destination, plus another 300,000 gold for every subsequent errand. Han delivered a masterful performance, fully dedicated to following whatever bizarre scenario or quest objective the game system threw his way. He was prepared to give everything in his journey to ascend to monarchy, recognizing that it was time to move forward and tackle the next challenge. He contacted the elders, instructing them to cease all other activities and focus purely on leveling up and advancing. The following day, Han successfully navigated his way to the formidable Zeph Mountains. As Han was quietly proceeding, minding his own business in true adventure style, a fully armored warrior observing from the sidelines took notice of him, instantly wondering about this stranger's identity. The armored individual quickly recognized Han's status as a max chaotic, which immediately piqued his interest. Meanwhile, one of the warrior's companions saw this as a golden opportunity, believing that defeating a max chaotic would bring immense fame. They all collectively agreed that Han appeared incredibly feeble, noting his basic and distinctly subpar equipment. They figured he must be a novice who had died repeatedly on the journey here, and the group's boss assumed Han hadn't even spotted them. This meant his field of vision was narrow, a telltale sign that he was almost certainly a total rookie at the game. The leader commanded the entire party to prepare for combat, ready to hunt down this exceptionally chaotic player. As he casually wandered through the thick forest, Han noticed the area had suddenly gone completely silent, with no monsters remaining anywhere nearby. A notification from the system popped up unexpectedly, warning that some external magical force was attempting to lock down his physical body. Han felt absolutely nothing, yet the squad tailing him, who were actively plotting his demise, began panicking when their supposedly perfect magic trap completely failed. One suggested Han might be a mage, but they still agreed his gear looked utterly worthless. They assumed he had probably died so frequently that he lost everything he owned. Their archer prepared an arrow, while their boss simply yelled for everyone to stop talking and just finish the job already. The leader barked at one teammate to keep Han busy so he couldn't teleport away, while he and the assistant manager planned to close in for the final strike. Just as they were about to attack, Han turned around and gave them a stare that was icy enough to freeze a volcano. He offered them one last chance to run away before he dismantled them, but the fools confidently called his bluff. Their leader charged at him with all his might, and Han calmly asked what their character levels were. The massive hammer slammed right into Han and bounced off as if it had hit solid titanium. The manager immediately followed up with a heavy sword swing, which accomplished exactly nothing. Either The crew tried to coordinate their strikes, with the archer firing a volley, but everyone stared in shock as Han's health bar didn't even flicker. Sizing up his opponents, Han gasped the guy swinging the huge sword who was probably level 40, built like a 20-something. Meanwhile, the archer kept scrutinizing him, totally convinced Han wasn't wearing proper armor and hadn't muttered a single spell yet, so the archer began to suspect Han must have activated some hidden magical ability beforehand. Han gave a simple signal suggesting he had been expecting them all along. The leader looked like he was about to wet himself where he stood. Han felt completely bored, finding their attacks about as threatening as a small child's slaps. Deciding he'd played long enough, he prepared to strike back. Since his skills were currently locked, he simply planted his feet and adopted a basic fighting stance, ready to start throwing punches. The archer, of course, was positive he was about to cast some incredibly powerful spell. The archer, attempting to be cautious, yelled for everyone to back away while he prepped a non-magical shot. But Han had already smashed his fist into the leader's face, instantly sending him straight to sleep. The system chimed in to inform him that his crime statistics were spiking again, because he kept assaulting other players. The knight wielding the hammer let out a furious roar and charged forward to attack. Yet his sheer, overwhelming strength reduced that foe to a punchline. His criminal rating continued to skyrocket. He truly couldn't believe his eyes when the self-proclaimed tank collapsed instantly from a single hit. The healer and archer stood gaping like fish, realizing they hadn't even had a second to cast their boosting enchantments. Their squad leader shrieked for everyone to abandon ship, urging them to flee immediately since this confrontation was wildly beyond their capabilities. The archer attempted to retreat as well, realizing they had foolishly challenged a terrifying entity who was clearly not just some run-off sorcerer before he could escape. However, the target suddenly materialized directly behind him, moving with unsettling phantom speed. The archer's mind fizzled out completely, trying to comprehend exactly how someone could possibly possess such incredible velocity. He displayed a predatory smile, all gleaming fangs, and lethal intent, mockingly pointing out that they had initiated the battle only to now scurry off like terrified children. The archer suddenly understood with a jolt of horror that his opponent had held back a teleportation ability just to mess with their heads. Only a specific kind of player possessed movement skills of that caliber. A veteran, close quarters combat mage far surpassing level 60, perhaps like the legendary hunter Rufandel himself. He proceeded to thoroughly demolish them in a one-sided beat-down, and by the time he finished wiping the floor with them, he had reached level 16. He ultimately decided to spare their miserable lives, which caused a system notification to appear stating that his act of clemency had improved his rapport with the elders. He acquired a brand new ability labeled Charisma, though he honestly had absolutely no idea what Charisma was actually supposed to accomplish. It sounded suitably impressive, so he shrugged and went along with it. Suddenly, Lato appeared at his back, informing him that he had something important to demonstrate, and trusted that he would obey directions. Following a grueling week, he finally stumbled upon the Sky Devil Sanctuary. He looked absolutely dead on his feet from starvation and extreme fatigue, muttering angrily about the preposterous distance to this god-forsaken location. He reflected on the circumstances that had forced him into this journey. He was relaxing one moment, then the next. An elder abruptly ordered him to join them, opening a dimensional rift in the middle of a scorching desert. While rambling about the adventurous Cologne, he had been excited about earning points simply by traveling, but he never anticipated that traveling would consume an entire agonizing week. The elder finally announced that their destination, a village, lay just ahead. A surge of desperate optimism ignited in his heart, and he silently pleaded with the universe for a meal. But when his gaze fell upon the squalid, crumbling settlement, his spirits plummeted, wondering if this dilapidated shantytown could truly be where they were headed. Taking in the pitiful spectacle, his head began to itch as he suspected his master was probably responsible for ruining this area so thoroughly. The inhabitants appeared like emaciated zombies from lack of food, yet they immediately fell to their knees upon seeing him. They hailed him as their divine ruler and savior, believing their god had finally arrived. The system presented him with a quest to revitalize this failing disaster of a village. While they were practically performing synchronized deep bows, he forced out a pathetic grin, convinced his stomach was filing divorce papers due to severe starvation. This sage gentleman, known as Prophet Karl, was a true antique, clocking in at an absolutely outrageous 163 calendar years of existence. He approached, clearly relieved his boss finally materialized, then delivered the crucial briefing. Apparently, this fellow had secretly cultivated a dozen senior leaders, keeping them safe from the Empire for centuries. Furthermore, these gray-haired specialists had dedicated their whole existence to tracking down the ultimate sovereign's heir. The minor hitch: this entire zone was a barren desert, devoid of beasts, wildlife, or cultivable soil. However, he internally labeled the entire endeavor spectacularly idiotic, genuinely baffled why procuring necessary resources from outside sources wasn't standard operating procedure. The aged gentleman adamantly claimed such an excursion was non-negotiable, asserting that fetching provisions externally was impossible even for the highly esteemed elders. He grasped that his primary managerial responsibility had instantly become preventing the entire population from keeling over due to massive caloric deficiencies. Summoning Lucto for a quick consultation, he needed to know the community's estimated remaining endurance. The seasoned veteran grimly estimated their survival windows spanned perhaps 14 days, tops. Ascending a convenient, modest elevation nearby, he spoke directly to the community members, acknowledging he fully recognized their absolutely famished and deeply distressed predicament. He explained he had been trapped perfecting his skills relentlessly, leaving him unavailable for proper governance, but he promised immediate, revolutionary improvements starting today. He solemnly pledged to commit every resource he possessed toward sustaining their lives. 2 weeks felt entirely sufficient, he mused, imploring them to simply hold out just a short while longer. His internal dashboard confirmed the populace's spirit immediately soared, and their dedication to their new leader skyrocketed dramatically. He spun around to Loxo, instructing him to join the expedition immediately, reasoning that double the manpower meant significantly faster journey times. The remaining senior staff stayed behind to manage security. Loxo offered an agreeable nod, no fuss whatsoever, and the pair promptly departed. His command was clear: dispatch any hostile creatures they encountered and meticulously gather every bit of treasure or precious geological specimen those monsters happened to cough up. He privately suspected this particular assignment might turn out to be surprisingly effortless, perhaps even a total vacation. 7 days had passed since the dynamic duel, and Loxo had vanished completely into the treacherous mountain landscape. Loxo was experiencing immense gratification that his ruler had actually managed to orchestrate all necessary arrangements with astonishing punctuality. He gave a casual, fact shoulder twitch. Naturally, he secured the simplest essentials initially, given their severely limited operational schedule. He was comfortably draped across a massive rock, suspiciously studying the mound of various sacks overflowing with miscellaneous, unidentifiable contents. Only a handful of recent sunrises previous. Sibling received a frantic communication from him, essentially soliciting a massive personal favor. He requested she deploy a spatial storage satchel, conjure sufficient oatmeal to satisfy 800 individuals, and transport the whole sloppy mess to the peaks, mirroring her previous delivery run. She nearly suffered an airway obstruction upon reading this demand, utterly perplexed as to why in the universe her brother required 800 servings of gruel. He had arranged this culinary operation utilizing her services well in advance. Upon reaching the mountainous destination, her mind was still silently shrieking over her brother's completely nonsensical activities. Casually lobbed a striking blue gemstone toward her as payment, rendering her absolutely speechless with shock. She immediately descended into a mental panic, suspecting secret funding from an influential backer or clandestine organization. He quickly refuted her theory, insisting there was no shadowy benefactor nonsense involved. He simply wanted her to auction it off and retain a tidy 10% commission. Her complexion instantly drained to the color of copier paper. Still, she dismissed it as pure random fortune and, utterly convinced her sibling couldn't possibly be pulling off this massive operation solo. He further requested she use the stone's proceeds to acquire 3 package teleportation devices during her return trip. He intends to link teleportation hubs between those peaks and the demonic lair plus the neighboring hamlet. This strategy slashes a miserable 7-day hike into seconds. A scheme our boy considers absolute genius. Although spending a fortune on triple travel gates makes his wallet weep, and his eyes moisten. Meanwhile, old man Erda mopes around the camp assuming their leader ditched them to slowly decay and perish. Now this brat expects a royal welcome, and total submission simply for inheriting a fancy title and name. Granted, the head geezer Loxo would happily catch a bullet for the kid without a second thought. Yet he understands that several veterans remain skeptical, praying the kid messes up the local community soon, or utters a fake promise, providing a perfect excuse to delete him. Then the protagonist finally arrives, and the peasants lose their minds shouting that their supreme boss returned dragging mountains of delicious cargo. The grumpy elder emerges, annoyed by the chaotic noise and roadie celebration. His sockets practically explode upon witnessing the massive towers of grain sitting in the center square. As the hero smirks while flaunting the loot, explaining he actually considered bringing steak and wine. However, consuming crazy fast food after a long famine would likely cause their internal organs to detonate. Hence mushy soup is the menu, leaving the old man baffled regarding how the kid pilfered such riches. The starving locals, feeling blessed, begin bellowing praise for their mighty savior, while throwing a wild party. This stunt elevates his local reputation to the moon. Folks assume he possesses godlike powers, while he shoots a devious look, silently agreeing with their naive worship. He commands a subordinate to assist Lucca with the buffet line before retreating to his private quarters. Abandoning the chaos, he realizes snacks are insufficient since they still need designer threads and decent roofs. Nevertheless, sacks and shields are the current agenda, until a sudden rhythmic tapping hits his wooden entrance. The boss grants entry to Ura, who immediately face plants on the floor apologizing for being a traitorous jerk. He notes the veteran folded like a cheap lawn chair, weeping and sniveling like a kindergartner losing candy. He kicks himself for ever doubting him. He anticipated this mission would be a grueling grind, but the speedrun is actually going incredibly smooth. He wears a creepy smirk, contemplating how this entire situation is playing out quite beautifully for him. He advises the man to relax, confessing that he still lacks the power of a literal god. Consequently, it makes sense why the senior citizen struggled to believe in his flashy new leadership. Truthfully, he would likely harbor similar doubts himself. Still, he requests total devotion now, vowing to compensate that loyalty with 10 times the original value. He delivers the speech with a dazzling smile, causing the elderly man to weep even more pathetically. Spewing endless excuses combined with a sappy monologue earns him the 12th fussel's approval, although internally, he considers this senior a complete halfwit. Simultaneously, the protagonist reaches rank 19 while accumulating a massive hoard of advancement tokens. He starts plotting a journey elsewhere to showcase his fresh, shiny abilities and see what destruction he can cause. Lucco's warning about staying low to avoid imperial suspicion rings in his ears, especially since the other geezers gave him identical advice earlier. However, the protagonist concludes his companion remains the premier choice for a sidekick, mostly because the man's mountain ninja skills are legendary. Suddenly, this warrior stumbles upon a furry, woodland beast. The protagonist stares, realizing this creature is a rare sight, probably some oversized manga, bear, or whatever weirdness nature threw at him. The companion pulls a blade to start slicing, but he halts him, recalling that these fluffy giants usually dwell around rank 40. Usually, a full party of half a dozen heroes would struggle, but he is the type of monster who deletes squads alone. Consequently, he chooses to duel the grizzly alone, and the beast charges after spying him. The protagonist springs skyward, before descending with an earth-shattering fist, pancaking the animal instantly, labeling it a quick payday. He stashes 20,000 gold coins while gaining a pathetic sprinkle of experience for his minor effort. His companion, witnessing the slaughter with a dropped jaw, begins worshipping him even more while gazing at the mangled remains. He muses over why the beast couldn't survive a solitary tap, questioning if the bear was a wimp or he was godlike. Regardless, he commands his partner to hurry since the adamantium dungeon awaits, and the subordinate obeys. A few sunrises pass during transit. The duo eventually reaches the massive dungeon entrance. The companion detects many magical signatures nearby. The warrior concurs, recalling that the adamantium pit is located within the starter town. This basic pit near Urkus offers a fairly manageable challenge, because finishing rewards include those sweet upgrade tokens. Academic pupils plus union teachers frequently gather here for grinding. A grin creeps across his face, reminiscing about how he turned that massive forest predator into a literal floor mat yesterday. He ponders the actual strength of those union trainers versus his own, then moves ahead, while ordering his companion to follow him invisibly. Within the underground's protected rest area, a novice whispers that this is merely his second survival attempt, but the kid is still absolutely terrified, telling his friend that he simply prays they survive the boss fight and make it home. Suddenly, both youngsters spot Han, the notorious legend of high-level chaos. Terror consumes the pair, causing a sprint toward their teacher while begging the gods for protection from the chaos. Suddenly, an arrogant jerk saunters over, glaring at him with a look of misplaced confidence that only a true moron could possess. Previously, during his monster hunting session, Han observed a ridiculous reality. 0 treasures or items materialize whenever he performs the actual execution. Opening the menu, the youth discovers a fortune attribute of abysmal -90, which totally destroys any hope for rewards. Sensing that destiny is actively pranking him, he genuinely hopes the old man finishes the job so he can retire, while the guy minds his own business. Some self-important teacher wanders up, interrogating why he is standing in this specific area. Han remembers a sibling mentioning that Union elites frequently haunt these zones, and since they are level 40, he must be cautious. She was definitely right about these snobby clowns looking for trouble, as the loudmouthed coach repeats his annoying inquiry once more, inquiring why the boy is idling nearby. Yet he retorts by asking why this random person feels entitled to bark orders. The expert snorts, bragging he has encountered many arrogant losers with that exact same attitude during his long career. Should that teenager vanish now, the expert might decide to spare him. Scanning the numbers, the pro notices a level 19 peasant wearing equipment that belongs in a filthy dumpster. He dismisses the youth as a bottom feeder who likely murders rookies just to sell their meager belongings for pennies. Hun, baffled by the crazy assumptions being thrown his way, decides to stay calm, because there are actual children nearby. He advises the tutor to relax and focus on teaching, explaining that he simply wants to finish this level. However, the teacher remains unconvinced, smirking that he has already figured out the supposedly devious and wicked master plan. Right then, a digital notification blares that the protective zone is scheduled to vanish in a matter of seconds. The coach commands the youngsters to take cover, while the crowd finally recognizes him as a prestigious union representative. Getting irritated, the youth tells the blower to go jump in a lake because he is not seeking a fight. The arrogant mentor simply treats him like another weakling acting tough without power. Han reiterates that he is not some creep interested in bullying children, since his only goal is finishing the level. Instead, the teacher draws his blade exactly when the interface declares that the safety barrier has completely dissolved. Charging to strike, the expert calls him a cocky little brat needing a lesson. His self-control finally evaporates, giving the aggressive fool one last chance to leave alive. But the stubborn teacher attacks anyway, using every bit of strength possible. The sharp blade passes right through his body, yet he remains perfectly still without even blinking an eye. The guy stares in shock, questioning whether this kid is utilizing some bizarre type of illusory sorcery to survive. Han gives him a terrifying look, inquiring if that weak and embarrassing poke was honestly the best he could manage. Terror begins to grip the teacher when he realizes this isn't the normal rookie, as something feels incredibly wrong. Panicking, the man attempts to summon help, convinced this level 19 weirdo is hiding a secret and overpowered ability. The youth tells the moron that his intentions were clearly peaceful, reminding that idiot to stay away. Losing patience, he strikes back, burying a heavy fist into the middle of the teacher's soft stomach. Pure disbelief covers the man's expression when he realizes the kid ignored a sword and fought back with bare hands. He tries dialing emergency services, but a giant flash of sparkles ruins his day, consuming every square inch of the neighborhood. With that simple flick, Han sends the dude to the Shadow Realm. The children huddle up like shivering kittens, making sure nobody actually die. He shoots them a narrow glare, basically wondering if they are total idiots too. They shake their heads like crazy, so he grins because they learned a lesson. Then he tells them to play the game right and stop being such losers. Soon after, he gets all philosophical, wondering why he acts so incredibly dramatic. He did not mean to traumatize the toddlers, he thinks while looking skyward. He notices he reached a big, scary castle made of bricks, surrounded by a bunch of calcium-rich bony dudes holding sticks. He assumes this is the main evil clubhouse sitting right in the center. Recalling the manual, he realizes he must wreck the shit to reach the boss. Since these bony losers drop zero loot, he ignores them to save his energy. Brushing off their angry, socketless stares, he runs full speed at the wall. The computer begins yelling that the skeletons are super grumpy and ready to fight, and mentions he might get a boo-hoo, but he truly does not care. He calculates that roughly 10 decent slaps should turn the place into dust. However, one light tap makes the whole building crumble like a soggy taco shell, leaving him quite bummed out, since he thought the hut was actually built well. However, he enjoys the quick win, then immediately keeps moving without even pausing. He trots forward to sweep the rest of the trash out of here. Later, the teacher summoned by the crying children show up, only to find a pile of pebbles. Because he's only a low-ranking rookie, the experts look totally confused and baffled, failing to grasp how he wrecked the castle while ignoring the guards, perhaps using cheats. Then the game suddenly yells that the level is finished, making everyone look like shocked statues. They scream that it is impossible, refusing to believe their own lying eyeballs. Back inside, Han wonders why there are so many rattling bones cluttering his path. He knows most weaklings would cry here, but he is constructed from pure awesomeness. He charges toward the finish line, ignoring the bony zombies trying to grab him. Those threats barely tickle his ego while he lazily connects, wondering if this supposedly final level is actually worth the hype. Diving headfirst like a caffeine-addicted wrecking ball, he strikes the target, praying it survives longer than a cheap dollar store toy. Unfortunately, the boss barrier folds faster than a cheap lawn chair under his mediocre tap. Scowling, he ponders what sort of bargain bin defense mechanism shatters from a gentle breeze. Realizing the teacher squad is about to crash his party, he concludes it is time to finish this nonsense. A flashy digital notification appears, throwing virtual confetti at him for beating this pathetic cave. Chuckling, He realizes this hole was basically a glorified tutorial since he finished it while practically half asleep and bored. Dumping his hard-earned experience points into his stats, he watches his level bar tick up to the big 20. At last, the spooky playground known as the Dark Realm is open for his chaotic vacation. Predicting a frantic pursuit from the faculty, he is shocked that the hallway monitors are currently nowhere in sight. Perhaps those losers are just having a picnic near the front door, while waiting for his grand exit. Exiting the cave, he gasps at the massive battalion of angry teachers blocking the path, exceeding his most pessimistic estimates. A frantic staff member shrieks for the villainous mastermind to reveal himself, leaving him staring back with total confusion. Considering he is standing there solo, he wonders who these clowns are shouting at, then asks his spectral companion if his invisibility glitch, receiving a firm negative response. The educator smoothly claims he knows Han's intentions, suggesting they skip the violent gymnastics for everyone's sake, clearly attempting to use brain cells to stop a bloodbath. However, this pacifism just irritates the guy who wanted a brawl, finding their diplomatic behavior more suspicious than a free lunch. Acknowledging that a skirmish would likely turn several pupils into unintentional speed bumps, he decides bullying infants is beneath him, while the teacher grants him a free pass. Claiming he respects Han's desire to avoid a premature funeral, the leader offers peace, and Hans simply nods along to the carrot. Violence was not on his schedule, plus he already warned the last substitute teacher that annoying him leads to bad times, so he leaves immediately. Striding right through their ranks, he focuses on reaching the Shadow Zone where he can feast on the souls of unsuspecting gamers. The lead teacher exhales deeply, feeling lucky, whereas his colleague remains as quiet and stiff as a statue. He feels relieved the mess ended without needing tiny coffins for the class. Master Zergal acts unbothered, treating the situation like a minor annoyance instead of a disaster. Previously, Zergal learned that the last poor sap who challenged Han got into a scuffle that turned several bystanders into casualties. Even with a careful strategy, speedrunning the dungeon was likely a flex to show off his mysterious sponsors, and Zergal realized that protecting the daycare was priority one, making a polite dismissal their safest bet. Nearby, a different staffer watches the lunatic depart, questioning his sanity, yet concluding that Han is definitely a P-tier agent of Cure Mayhem. Rumors suggest he might be the legendary Rufindel, who is officially 50, though he could be using dirty hacks to mask his actual destructive power. In a distant land, the real Rufindel is currently turning various adventurers into Swiss cheese with his signature lethal spikes. Cackling like a movie villain, he suggests they wash up before their funerals while he deletes their avatars from existence, taunting the losers to uninstall the program since they spend more time dead than alive. He embodies the pinnacle of toxic gaming. He is solely present to gather the valuable items these individuals drop when they perish, finding the process of item collection incredibly lucrative. He suddenly recalls that someone has recently been hunting him down, which is rather peculiar since their paths have never actually crossed. Rumors suggest that a separate individual has been traveling extensively, imitating his persona and actions. He suspects that some aspiring, high-level chaotic wannabe is out there pretending to be him. Apparently, this imposter caused quite a scene in the dungeon recently, and he realizes that if this behavior continues, he risks getting expelled from the Great Union. Since knowing the Great Union is basically inviting certain doom, he decides it's time to track down this pretender before everything completely unravels. Meanwhile, let's turn our attention back to the Sky Devil settlement. Han returns and informs the elders that their upcoming expedition will take them to a location filled with flying creatures. He notes that among the elders, there is one who possesses expertise in casting magic from a distance. Lucko immediately understands exactly who he is talking about. One elder proudly raises his hand, asserting that he is the most proficient when it comes to long-distance magical assaults. He figures he will be dragging this elder along on the journey today, and the elder responds with a rather ominous smile and a nod. He suddenly remembers that his sister's birthday is approaching. Perhaps he should try acting like a responsible older brother for once. He resolves to put in extra effort today so he can afford a proper present for her birthday, and maybe even purchase an apartment later on. Upon their arrival at the Field of Darkness, he observes numerous players gathered throughout the area. The system sends an alert, warning him that the creatures are about to reappear. He notes that the action is about to commence and asks Zeta, the elder accompanying him, if he feels ready. Discovering that Zeta is actually a complete maniac, the elder starts screaming that he will adhere to every command his master gives, promising to break bones, peel off skin, and scorch every obstacle with hellfire. He continues by vowing to tear apart the limbs of anyone who dares oppose his master, leaving Han feeling slightly bewildered by the old man's intense fervor and strange behavior. Nearby, several players recognize him as the legendary ultimate chaotic figure. One player believes this presents an opportunity for him to achieve fame, and his companion wholeheartedly agrees with the idea. He commands the elder to swiftly eliminate these foolish players before reinforcements arrive, and also ensure all the monsters are captured. He emphasizes catching the blue storms specifically, while simultaneously every player in the vicinity focuses solely on killing him. The ultimate chaotic. He realizes he can easily teleport away whenever he chooses, so he questions why he even bothered bringing Zeta along in the first place. He then orders Zeta to demonstrate his long-range magic immediately, and the frenzied old man nods, swearing he will never disappoint his master. The elder raises his hand toward the heavens above. He silently hopes for his master's future to shine brightly as a brilliant purple light illuminates the entire sky. Zeta invokes the power of the dark deity and commands it to advance, demanding it obliterate everyone foolish enough to impede his master's path. The players begin screaming in terror, frantically attempting to escape with their lives. With icy indifference, he commands that colossal beast to flatten those peasants into pancakes immediately. Admiring the geezer's fancy moves, Hun decides he should finally display his own flashy combat talents. His murderous badge darkens significantly. Those wicked deeds grow heavy and physically apparent. Gossip regarding his wicked behavior travels through every kingdom. Then a digital notification manifests, proclaiming him a divine butcher. The weird label actually leaves him feeling somewhat stunned and confused. When a top-tier jerk exceeds a specific evil threshold, the game brands them a professional slayer. Should these villains fight players wearing hero capes, their offensive and protective abilities plummet towards zero. Should they perish, their rebirth timer rockets up to 10 days, and every single equipment item is guaranteed to drop. The Supreme Guild leader Han views the notification, and ponders if his infamy continues growing, then simply ignores the entire mess. Personal magnetism improves as guild devotion surges, so he lets mortals wrestle with the ancient Dronzer while he focuses on finishing this dungeon. Silence blankets the bloody arena as Zeta smirks like a lunatic, signaling the end of their task. Far on the horizon, a sudden movement grabs his attention, warning him of new uninvited guests. Digital notifications flicker, announcing that total mayhem is arriving soon. Large bovines crash into the area, a herd of angry stegosaurs charging toward his position. He remains calm since Zeta seems ready to turn those walking burgers into a massive backyard barbecue. Tossing a quick thumbs up, he instructs his subordinate to delete every single beast from existence. Regarding his own strategy, he chooses to use his fists for some old-fashioned physical therapy, praying that perhaps one sturdy cow might actually withstand more than one gentle poke of doom. Sadly, the identical disappointing outcome repeats again. His single strike erases the target. Regardless, he collects 18,000 shiny currency bits as a reward for his minimal exertion. Watching his bank account swell, he continues punching things while the old man acts as janitor, eradicating all living entities. They operate like a pair of absolute maniacs. Meanwhile, a couple of spectators hiding nearby mumble that these dudes have totally lost their minds. A witness claims this is normal grinding, but his companion laughs at such a stupid suggestion. Insisting that the blade wielder is bizarre, he suggests the guide is some weird punching magic user. Referring to Zeta, they remain ignorant of the fact that he possesses secret devastating offensive techniques, calling him a wizard because he barely moved during the earlier slaughter. His pal assumes his level is at least 50. Suddenly Zeta bounces into the clouds, howling about eternal honor for his magnificent boss and king. With a mighty purple attack, he utterly vaporized an entire monster pack. Boof, just like that. He thought hit overkill, but hey, spectacular results are spectacular. A satisfying system ping announced his level. A quick confirmation of his progress. He instructed Zeta to prioritize gathering stones, as his formidable abilities were currently recharging their fabulousness. Zeta instantly sprang to action. He tucked away 7 bluestones, absolutely thrilled by their lightning fast acquisition rate, feeling quite efficient. Suddenly, a boss monster materialized. He figured they should expedite its demise, and then vanish like ninjas. He fixed his gaze on the boss, as 2 players afar simply got. He instantly recognized it, the Chaos Bull King, a colossal, bipedal bovine nightmare, clearly missed leg day. He mused this was his inaugural encounter with such an oddity, then swiftly tasked Zeta with teddying up the pesky minion monsters and snatching their loot, while he himself thoughtfully evaluated the Chaos Bull King. He concluded it packed more muscle than a typical field boss, secretly praying this chunky creature would cough up at least 20 bluestones in a neat bundle. Honestly, he secretly wished the boss would miraculously endure his initial strike, purely so Zeta could snag the satisfying glory of the finishing blow. Just as he prepared to make his move, Zeta abruptly gestured towards a cluster of distinctly powerful energies rapidly converging on their position. He rapidly grasped he lacked the time to finish the boss before those meddlers arrived. Considering it wiser to cut their losses, he informed Zeta they were executing a swift, strategic retreat, muttering about the truly infuriating inconvenience of it all. The sting of this shameful retreat burned. He loathed feeling so utterly powerless. He had internally swore to restore the legendary Sky Devil's magnificence across this entire continent. His eyes welled up, not from the physical exertion, but the agony of vanished bluestones, as they bolted, leaving the pair of observers utterly bewildered and perhaps slightly judgmental. Later, safe within his digital sanctuary, he meticulously scored the game's official notice board, hunting for any new monster patch bulletins. Alas, his search yielded absolutely nothing, prompting him to ponder why that peculiar black chaos bull had made an appearance. Considering it was supposedly an unreleased feature, it had to be his infamous -99 luck acting up again, he concluded, utterly stumped if this was a fortuitous sign or merely a giant, flashing death flag. Regardless, he thoroughly lamented not simply pummeling the rogue black bull into oblivion and swiping its precious treasure trove of bluestones. He scanned a forum post detailing how hunting ground difficulties had abruptly spiked without warning, now cruelly pushing levels up to a daunting 97. One disgruntled player reported a nightmarish experience in a Mantium dungeon, claiming it was pure torment, with black skull soldiers materializing from thin air. Certain monstrous hordes proved so relentlessly brutal, escape was impossible, while another account mentioned a terrifying ambush by an enormous black bear deep within the dense jungle. Players haunting the bear territory openly speculated whether the game developers had covertly cranked up the usual difficulty settings, a thought that made him realize these were precisely the places he had frequented just lately. He began to seriously ponder if he was, in fact, the root cause of this burgeoning chaos. Further down, he discovered another entry mentioning a peculiar new black monster sighted in the desolate dark desert just that day, instantly confirming it was his old acquaintance. The post further elaborated that the very same max-level chaotic player who'd annihilated the Chaos House earlier had promptly bailed when the Black Chaos Bull King appeared. Subsequently, 5-tier players had swept in, vanquished the beasts, and reaped a glorious reward of 3 bundles of bluestones, each stack containing a hefty 30. The comments section unanimously declared it absolutely bonkers loot, and as he read, the color visibly drained from his face, he began to loudly curse his own wretched luck, seething over how those fortunate scoundrels had just casually acquired a whopping 90 bluestones. Tears began to cascade down his face like a complete fool as he grieved his colossal losses, especially after tallying his paltry day's haul, a mere 11 bluestones and a measly 5 million gold. He glumly calculated. This meager haul, he calculated, barely afforded him 3 days of grub, roughly 36 million gold after conversion fees. After the taskman loots him, and his sister swipes her cut, he has 15 lousy bucks left, barely enough for a cheap takeoff. While he glares at his pathetic stats, he whines that this grind should have bought him a mansion and a Ferrari by now, but his trash level bars him from the cool zones, and keeps his best moves locked behind a paywall of incompetence. Because of those stupid debuffs piling up, the path forward looks grim, so he groans, realizing his only destiny is to slaughter digital monsters like a caffeinated lunatic. In a nearby cubicle, some guy delivers a status update about his power spiking like a sugar rush, while a mysterious creep lurks in a revolving chair. The shadow asks about that angry dark cow, and the dude agrees, saying the beast got a massive gym membership, which makes the boss realize this thing is not a generic mob. He orders his snitch to continue the monster massacre but throw more meat shields into the grinder to speed things up. Those corporate suits view players as nothing more than sacrificial paper towels. Replacing dead bodies is easy, and this icy jerk is actually Director Young, the unbig shot, causing the snitch to bob his head like a pigeon. Before the exit, the boss mentions that masked Kyoto weirdo trashing the dunes, his face turning into stone, as he realizes it must be the same annoying punk from before. This guy has been annoying their guild forever, but 21 days later, the computer announces his level went up while he looks incredibly serious. Finally, reaching level 29 took longer than a slow microwave burrito. Luck though wanders over, crying that the kid will crumble after 20 days of hiking, and while the geezer's worry is sweet, it is also super annoying. He ignores the drama despite being shackled by a million game rules. Hating the thought of being a wimp, he swears to show his pupils the cool parts of the map and tells the old guy that everyone will eventually worship their cult. Sleep is for losers, so he will sprint forever so the old man can just cheer from the sidelines without having a heart attack. This speech makes Loco sob like a baby, and he bends over like a door, promising to help until his spine turns into dust. Deep down, his actual goal is just a fancy condo with working plumbing, a fast ride, and the grand plan of being a greedy landlord of a skyscraper. He grins like a movie villain until a notification pings. Probably his annoying sister asking for more of his lunch money. She asks if he received that weird mission, complaining that these developers are clearly smoking something lately. He scowls, wondering what the fuss is, and sees it involves those flashy 7th star gods who love causing drama. Han keeps the screen and finds a task to join the elite space club, which requires him to vaporize some bad guys, and then fight the bosses. He needs to protect the land to become a shiny star, but he suspects the bad guys mentioned are actually himself, which is a total vibe kill. He checks the forums to see the drama, finding the entire internet in a frenzy, because every single player is yapping about the new mission. He skims the posts while his sister watches, and she calls it a dumpster fire, making him wonder why gamers are perpetually salty. This secret job is a mystery, but if it links to that Olympus lore, the power buff will probably be more insane than a caffeinated god. Sia asks if he will try out for the star team, but he knows no shopkeeper will talk to him since his karma is basically radioactive. He asks if she wants a shot, but she declines because her job at the union keeps her swamped, blushing as she claims only basement-dwelling pros or players from overseas would bother. That thought never crossed his mind, but he notices the monsters are getting tougher, suspecting the game has labeled him and his demon squad as the primary villains of the current plot. If his theory holds water, those 7-star elites will probably gank him all at once, which ruins his plan for a quiet retirement, meaning he needs to act before they delete him. Expecting a world of pain soon, he decides to bulk up like a gem rat on steroids, then boots up his connection to the Olympus server. Upon entering the digital realm, he informs the geriatric council of his solo backpacking plans, leaving the trio looking like they saw ghosts. The old fart starts screeching about his sudden flop on the plan, insisting that wandering alone is a death wish and he must rethink his choices. He acknowledges their undying devotion with a shrug, explaining that the spacey intel he recently snagged dictates a change in his strategy. Those Imperial jerks are watching every move, so stealth is the name of the game, making a solo mission the only logical path forward. After absorbing the news, the geezers pray he stays in one piece, while he worries that the active hunt for the 7 stars complicates things. Dragging the group along would just poke the Imperial bear, so he prays they stay home and protect the base while the real work starts. Labeling his loyal companions as beloved morons, he focuses on winning over the remaining grumpy superiors before his luck runs out completely. Scoring a thumbs up from Urda was a lucky break, but he still needs 4 more cranky bosses to sign his permission slip. By some miracle he tackled the hunger crisis, proving he can fix things, though his wallet is now lighter than air so he is currently broke. Now he must grind like a maniac to hit level 40, which unlocks that super edgy ghost technique and lets him follow his teacher's dusty old treasure map. While chasing side objectives, he hopes for better solutions, though he realizes that finding rare blue gems is impossible given his legendary status as a luckless loser. Since options are limited, he squares off against some grumpy dark bears, planning a furry massacre to power level his way toward a slightly less pathetic future. When the fuzzy beast rushes position, he smacks down all of them in a heartbeat. Then a pop-up announces he just unlocked a brand new ability, it is officially called the oddly buff Knuckle. Curiosity spikes as he hopes this tool aids his slaughter, but after squinting at the fine print for a second, he discovers it is a garbage move that nerfs his strength and intentionally keeps enemies from actually dying. Despite the skill being hot trash, he dances like a buffoon, because he can finally farm loot without accidentally obliterating every target. Moving forward, he can simply allow other entities to deliver the final killing blow. Perhaps purchasing a loyal companion to snag the finishing strikes will bypass his own pathetic luck, so he joyfully skips back toward his humble abode. A shadowy figure sneaks up and whispers about finally tracking him down, confirming he is indeed the target, which triggers a weird sense of déjà vu. This unknown dude asks if he realizes the sheer amount of massive headaches and misery his presence has caused lately. It turns out to be Lupindle, the ultimate Chaos Lord, who is currently being blamed for all the protagonist's recent shenanigans. Absolutely nobody trusts a word out of his mouth, and while ranting about those Union jerks, it seems he wants to murder him to clear his name. He gazes at the stranger with total confusion, failing to recognize him despite the pungent scent of malice and dark energy radiating from the man. Standing there in disbelief, the villain wonders if he is being trolled, or if this kid is genuinely as clueless as a sack of hammers. The criminal asks if any shred of human morality remains in his soul, praying this is a prank, but the blank stare suggests total ignorance. Wearing a smug grin, he calls the guy quite entertaining, making the villain lose his mind instantly. Fuming with literal fire in his eyes, he screams that he is the real Lupindle, the exact identity this brat has been stealing for weeks. The Lupindle squad arrives to drag his sorry hide toward those Union jerks, ensuring he realizes he is currently drowning in a pool of absolute misfortune. Lupendel expects a tearful apology on bended knee, yet that blank expression convinces him this Morin deserves a beating for his identity theft crime. Believing the guide is trembling in his boots, Lupendel prays for a quick surrender so he can deliver a light bruising without actually killing him. Instead, he tosses a casual shrug and mentions they ought to quit yapping and begin the scheduled violence already, calling him a certified nutcase. Lupendel groans about the tragedy of having to punch another high-tier chaotic player into the dirt. Whatever, he opts to unleash everything, sprinting directly toward his target like a very angry, very confused bull, hoping the fellow survives the initial strike, because Lupendel truly desires to administer a proper, thorough educational thrashing. The punch lands squarely on his sternum, yet his health meter behaves as if it barely noticed the impact at all. A pathetic 3% decline occurs, leaving him disappointed that this overhyped feline is the one everyone supposedly treats like a god. Naturally, a level 50 player operates in a different league than the 40-somethings, though the performance remains rather lackluster. Triggering a fresh ability he just grabbed, he drops into a solid combat posture like a kung fu master in training, prepared for a retort. He uses the skill to nerf his power by 90% to avoid accidental murder via a single tap. Simultaneously, Lupendel assumes a legendary technique is brewing, fearing this is the same prick who deleted the Union Director with one flick. That move must be terrifyingly potent, likely requiring an eternity to load while carrying the risk of a total system meltdown. While Lupendel drowns in a sea of frantic guesses and paranoid theories, he shifts into a blur, rapidly closing the physical gap, and wraps his fingers tightly around the man's windpipe. He delivers a swift knuckle send which then zips back, questioning if his strike even made a satisfying thud. Lupendel mocks his speed, claiming a shield was deployed just in time to negate the majority of that weak attempt. He makes a clicking sound of annoyance, lamenting the fact that his fist failed to make a perfectly clean connection. Realizing Lupendel could take more, he boosts his output by 40%, while Lupendel thinks he is just lying to stall for his skill cooldowns. Usually, when a combatant has an ability ready, they stop the yapping and simply unleash the pain without further delay. Certain of a vulnerability, Lupendel lunges forward like a foaming, rabid street dog, only to receive a face full of fists so powerful it launches him into a brief, involuntary flying lesson. Digital notifications began blinking rapidly, showing that every single magical protection Lupendel possessed was reduced to useless glass shards by that one punch. Lupendel slides to a stop, finally understanding this jerk is way more deceptive than his original assessment suggested. He concludes that the initial jab was mere trickery to gauge his defense, whereas the follow-up was the true hammer. However, the attacker looks quite displeased, suggesting that his grand plan did not actually go exactly according to script. He swears silently that teleportation skills are annoying, wishing he had reached level 55 to unlock that sweet mental vision ability. Lupendel begins leaking spooky vibes like a broken sewer pipe, drenching the surroundings in gloomy shadows. The villain bets everything on this ultimate strike, ditching to knock the guy out and haul his carcass to the authorities. Observing the drama, Han recalls some rumor about his foe keeping a cheesy secret weapon hidden away. He assumes it was cardiac arrest, judging by that goofy stance. That must be the move, though our hero has his own brand of nonsense ready to go. He turns off his safety limiters and damage reducers, eager to throw hands with every bit of juice he possesses. Lupendel thinks his opponent is totally cooked and flat out of options at this point. Bellowing like a rabid, angry beast, Lupendel sprints ahead, while Han matches his speed with equal enthusiasm. As they collide, a massive boom vibrates through the room, making the air feel like a jittery mess. Once the dust clears, Han looks bored while Lupendel stares with absolute shock in his eyes, confused why the target is still breathing, since that heart-stopper spell should have turned him into fertilizer. What a total nutcase, standing perfectly fine, whereas Han stares at the fresh corpse with the look of a kid who got bad candy, irritated that the guy just perished, while Lupendel's dying soul wonders if Han is some hidden martial arts maniac. Believing Lupendel is merely playing possum, he assumes his last punch just deleted every shield the guy had. Han cannot fathom why any sane person would dive into a brawl with zero defense, especially since he briefly thought Lupendel was actually formidable. That punny slap did not even tickle, yet Lupendel's ghost listens to the insults, begging for some blessed silence. He keeps grumbling about the pathetic attack power and why Lupendel kept swinging after his protection evaporated. Labeling him a complete moron, he shouts about how a high-level criminal can die without dropping a single shiny loot box. Then it clicks. Every piece of equipment probably turned to dust during this scrap, leaving nothing but worthless junk behind. Upon hearing this, the spirit of Lupendel feels a phantom heart attack. Those treasures were incredibly expensive. Shrugging his shoulders, Han decides that broken gear means no prizes, so there is no point in sticking around. He concludes he is finally beefy enough for the big leagues and gets ready to bounce. Concluding this victory should finally unlock better hunting zones. The hero vaults away with a giant leap, leaving Lupundle's ghost to sub and sell, muttering profanities, and throwing a spiritual tantrum like a toddler who lost his favorite toy. Enraged that a fake would act so superior, he promises to return and punch Han's smug grin off his face. He triggers Soul Tether, a skill that resurrects him instantly, and attempts to wiggle back into his meat suit, but a mysterious hooded figure appears out of nowhere, labeling him a prime ingredient. The guy's face stays hidden within his hood, plus the creep grunts regarding how snagging such a premium stuff today signifies his fortune is finally turning. The ghost of Rufindle flinches hard, questioning which annoying jerk this is, and what foul schemes he is brewing. That shadowy freak lifts a palm, and grabs the spirit without breaking a single sweat. He groans about wanting to kidnap Han's essence as well, though this pathetic scrap should suffice for now. Some frosty energy surges, while he crafts Rufindle into a mindless meat marionette. Then the game notification pings, explaining that he is stuck with major debuffs forever, assuming he cannot somehow escape this crapping mess. This masked weirdo grins, barking at the dead guy to hit the dirt and crank out 10 push-ups. Our fallen hero feels offended, wondering why on earth he would follow such a stupid request. However, the spirit leash kicks in, zapping his bits with vaults until he finally starts pumping, finishing the exercise forcefully while the robe jerk cackles, threatening him with extra torture if he ignores future commands. Searching his memory reveals zero info on spirit shackling, suggesting this guy possesses a rare, creepy gravedigger specialty. Based on the tone, the captor seems like a teenager. If the wizard giggles at his victim's current weakness, Rufindle calculates he might manipulate this youth through clever deceit, so he fakes a smile, calls him great leader, and mentions the other juror, plotting revenge while promising to help secure Han. Over in the actual world, Han is currently treating his sister to some greasy burgers. Her face glows as he orders the meat, which happens to be the specific meal she wanted. The girl timidly wonders if she can devour a couple, or even 3. Our hero smiles widely, gazing at the beef like a star-struck toddler, before shoving them all down. He reflects that nourishing those ugly demons was torture, whereas giving his kin some snacks is easy. He allows her to munch slowly, prompting her to look up, curious about his sudden surge of kindness. In the past he yelled if she wanted seconds, so she questions if his wallet is finally getting fat. The guy stares blankly, forgetting his past grumpiness, then coughs and mentions needing a hand, while she assumes he wants her to purchase more stuff. He explains that his fortune is trash, affecting both mob kills and loot because of his villain status, even though certain non-player characters act friendly, but utilizing them is difficult currently, and keeping pets alive is impossible, so he stops before asking her to build a gigantic sketchy corporation. The sister almost sprays soda in his face, looking at her brother like his brain has melted. She wonders if he is joking since nobody starts nonprofits anymore, but he promises it is a completely different kind of setup. She cautions that without deep pockets or secret data, the big bad union will just steal their hardware, particularly since those dark beasts are wrecking the economy. Plus she mentions that his job upgrade is right around the corner, so their rent and savings are safe, but he must contemplate this move before jumping, leading him to agree silently. Processing her advice, he remains determined to propose a deal, so she sighs and asks for details, while he begins his pitch. Meanwhile, in the executive suite of the guild, the boss delivers some really depressing updates. Corpses are piling up in the desolate wasteland, and he points out that ManhwaCapped promised to avoid killing unless someone actively sought trouble. The union boss interrupts, explaining they already made a statement telling everyone to leave all gear, lest ManhwaCapped's completely alone. However, the director strongly doubts the person in the video feed is actually Rufindle. He presents footage of himself and Han battling in the wilderness, which they recorded just recently. The ManhwaCapped engaged him in a full-blown one player versus player duel. The leader congratulates the director for obtaining such incredibly valuable video evidence. The director admits he made a stupid error by launching an attack after his protective enchantments completely failed. He fought in a way that seemed unnaturally desperate, which became clear after they analyzed the footage. They concluded Han is a master of close quarters martial arts, operating at an impossibly high skill ceiling, despite looking like a damn kid. The director suspects Han has a secret class, judging by his uncontrolled power, meaning he likely hasn't fully mastered it yet. The director adds that during the intelligence mission, they also received an advancement quest from a noble non-player character, prompting the leader to inquire about its purpose. The director displays the character's picture, causing the leader to frown, since the image looks nothing like the person in the recording. The director confirms this discrepancy, having verified with the aristocrats. Apparently, the system mislabeled this specific Maxcaudeg as Ramthadian. The quest specifies that defeating him would break the curse, but the director argues it's smarter to chase a target with data rather than running after ghosts. The leader shrugs, stating the only thing that matters is achieving stable points, then asks how many fighters the director requires, to which the answer is 30. The plan involves sending in their most useless staff members first as cannon fodder to deplete the target, paying 100.01 for fatalities, and giving 300.01 bonuses to top performers. A woman speaks up, asking if that compensation is really sufficient for risking their lives, noting that even a virtual death in Olympus still results in real suffering. The director reassures her about the advancement points they'll get, confidently asserting that their members' loyalty ensures they will give maximum effort. He concludes with a condescending remark about how people should work hard while they are young, and the leader chuckles that 300.01 is more than enough motivation. With a total bounty of 700 million gold available for the target, the director fully intends to skim 200 million for himself, and the leader grants his permission. The leader thinks 3 million won is more than sufficient, caring absolutely nothing about how many people die so long as his bank account grows fatter, ending his speech with a cruel smirk. Deep within the Lepine Mountains, Saya finally tracks down her sibling, and Hun's face lights up at her appearance, immediately asking if she brought all the items he requested. She nods, though her mind is filled with doubt, wondering if these really count as proper study materials, seeing as they are just starter magic manuals containing spells weaker than what new mages use. Furthermore, she believes there's no point trying to learn anything mid-job transition anyway, since with his insane attributes, he should have chosen a class a long time ago. He inquires whether she has ever encountered the phrase, "In the hands of a true swordsman, even a blade of grass becomes a deadly weapon," and she blinks, saying it sounds unfamiliar to her. He informs her that the quote is perfectly relevant here, explaining that when someone possesses God tier stats, a simple basic strike can be a killing blow. He rapidly absorbs the information from the entire collection of beginner texts, internalizing all their skills in only a few minutes. He considers it somewhat pathetic that given his particular specifications, he is stuck playing the role of a discount one-punch man. He suddenly remembers he still hasn't done his job change, almost giving her whiplash, and he affirms that is precisely his point. She begins panicking like a startled poultry, questioning how a guy possessing such ridiculous godhood remains a basement dweller without a paycheck. Existence feels broken to her, considering she ditched her stable guild position for his sake, only to find him still professionally lounging, causing her to grumble in total confusion. The man must provide for her future given she bet her entire life savings on his success, a fact he recognizes while feeling sincere appreciation for her loyalty. Secretly, he desires to restore their family reputation alongside her, so he tests a basic mending spell on his sibling, earning him a sarcastic ocular rotation. She assumes a tier 1 charm will not even scratch her bruises, yet he advises patience. Then suddenly, that tiny spark fuses her flesh back into perfection. However, the girl remains skeptical, requesting the liquid medicine bottle for safety, but he suggests she simply glance at her vitality meter before chugging juice. Her eyes widen in shock, seeing her vitality meter hit the maximum, causing her brain to short-circuit from the sheer impossibility. To sweeten the deal, he casts powerful combat enhancements upon her frame, allowing her to experience her freshly boosted physical prowess firsthand. She gazes about aimlessly, debating which unfortunate soul deserves a beating, perhaps considering a nearby brittle bone warrior as her inaugural punching bag. He merely gestures toward her backside, mentioning that searching for trouble is completely unnecessary. Twirling, she nearly experiences her bladder failure seeing a massive, shadowy grizzly lunging toward her face. This was no mythical creature, but a genuine, pooling predator with very sharp intentions, stomping in her direction. Fear paralyzes her muscles while she questions his sanity for demanding she fight a beast that typically requires a whole squad. Moments later, she actually manages to turn that giant predator into a very expensive room. She describes the encounter as mental yet incredibly cool, prompting him to grin, while inquiring if his claims finally seem legitimate to her. The girl confesses her faith, particularly since the animal dropped a sapphire crystal valued at 5 million coins if they traded as partners. He cautions that donating the prize to the official guild would result in a pathetic pittance of 100,000 as a reward. Yet, because they work for themselves now, every scrap of treasure they scavenge stays firmly within their own pockets. He proposes skyrocketing her stats to level 45 within the shadowy plains, an idea she enthusiastically accepts as they march toward the gloom. Upon arrival, he wanders the area with extreme confidence, while a literal parade of angry demons attempts to nibble on his ankles. She participates by reciting her mystical incantations, She zaps those stampeding demi-kiffers with a massive electrical surge while he plays the role of a very delicious-looking target. He throws a nonchalant praise her way, while the ground becomes carpeted in valuable Aegir gems from the fallen enemies. The duo manages to gather 18 crystals, and she almost bellows in delight imagining the $90 million landing in her bank account. Possessing such a fortune, she quips about finally launching her own Gracie fast food joint to flip patties. He surveys the area, noticing the zone appears significantly more desolate than the usual monster haunt. He ponders if some shadowy beast frightened everyone away, given this location used to be more packed than a morning subway train. Abruptly, a pair of warriors leaps from the brush, intending to execute the high-profile criminal for a fat sack of reward money, but he simply nudges an attacker's side with his hand, being careful not to turn the poor guy into mist. He desires to grant his sibling an opportunity to execute the final blows, and snatch their shiny trash just like their previous heist. The girl terminates the fellow, and retrieves a trinket, though she questions whether this behavior qualifies as blatant grand larceny. He advises her to chill, given that the public views him as a pathetic low-tier villain, ensuring nobody possesses the guts to engage. Yet should some fool try, he intends to pulverize them instantly. Then he signals forward toward a massive legion approaching their location. Her eyes catch a particular gentleman appearing quite overpowered, likely hitting level 50, commanding a complete battalion in his wake. Clarity strikes her with massive force upon seeing their intent to ambush him. He validates her theory, causing her total mental meltdown, screaming they must escape before time expires. Although he believes they have already crossed the threshold of no return, she begins wiggling in agony, as the computer heartlessly announces they are trapped until every single aggressive player is thoroughly deleted. He instructs her to relax her nerves, promising that things will turn out perfectly acceptable in the end. He suggests she retreat slightly to avoid association, sporting a wicked grin while scanning the crowd of losers hungry for a single skull. He cautions the group that should they abstain from striking, he might actually permit them to keep their pathetic lives. The military commander faces his troops, and declares this specific individual as their primary objective, the legendary chaotic menace. Unsheathing his blade, he commands them to stick to the strategy and move aside, revealing this boss is some corporate big shot named Jin. His wizards start mumble, whispering a paralysis curse to freeze him, yet a wave of pure sadness covers his features. He provided a fair heads bout. Nobody required a burial if they had simply minded their own business. However, it appears that peace was never an option on their schedule. He immediately explodes the chains and yeets a flaming orb at the group, causing Jin to laugh mockingly. Assuming it is merely amateur sorcery, he commands his front liners to raise their mystical barriers to stop the heat. Jin presumes that even if the incantation is remarkably powerful, their opponent is fundamentally a punchy, stabby guy, meaning these pathetic sparks represent zero threat. He directs his distant attackers to ready their ultimate abilities the second the explosion is successfully mitigated. Every random person present is absolutely parched for that 3,000,001 coin reward, following Jin's instructions like well-trained puppies while he observes them with a blank expression, curious about today's fodder. Previously it was some loser named Rufendel, then a sudden detonation shakes the meadow, and Jin nearly meets his maker, hacking and coughing while scanning the area in total disbelief. His whole battalion is currently napping permanently on the grass. He squinty eyes the scene, failing to understand how his minions were deleted by a purported sword swinger using basic sparkles. Demanding a ceasefire, he attempts to compute how such generic magic resulted in this total genocide. Skepticism enters his brain, while pondering if their foe is truly a wizard, which makes no sense, since a top-tier spellcaster would never be bothered by paralysis hexes regardless. Yet the weirdest part remains that the guy hasn't even budged. Jin contemplates a strategic retreat before things get messy, then silently observes that his spells seem to turn everyone into instant corpses. She remarks that those spicy meatballs are hitting way too hard. While he sheepishly confesses he had no clue about the impact, she assumes those magical shackles are still holding him down, but he clarifies that he has actually been roaming free the whole time. She demands to know why he is posing like a statue, so he explains he was busy talking. Plus his pyrotechnics were still reloading anyway. He decides to use these fools as target practice for a few more rounds, laughing like a total psychopath while she watches in absolute horror, realizing that her sibling has transcended normal humanity. Just as the panicked boss begins to completely lose his mind over the situation, Hun produces a massive yawn and looks bored to tears now that his abilities are ready, grumbling internally that 60 seconds is an eternity, while the manager tells the snipers to prepare for his command, cluelessly speculating that their target might actually be a wizard in disguise. Elsewhere in the urban sprawl, a rival boss gets a frantic request for help from Dian because everything has gone horribly wrong. He clarifies that Han is not some brawler, so they require high-level meat shields capable of absorbing a massive amount of mystical damage. Jin reports 3 casualties, while noting the target is currently restrained by a spell, giving them a brief window to strike. Before he recovers, the boss realizes the background check was garbage but cared more about results, telling Jin to survive, while the cavalry rushes to the scene, reasoning that sharing the loot is better than failing, making it sensible to flood the area with additional hired muscle immediately. Returning to the chaos, Jin instructs the bowman to unleash hell, convinced that Han is still paralyzed by the ongoing incantation. Thus he leapfrogs to the genius assumption that the boy is a sorcerer, showcasing his usual lack of brain cells in the process. He believes this is the perfect moment for victory and screams for total engagement, while Han simply displays a very sinister smile. The middle row of henchmen begins blasting away with their firearms, and the final group lets a storm of projectiles fly toward the target, resulting in a giant detonation that turns the whole vicinity into a bonfire. Jin bellows for his troops to sustain the assault, refusing to let the enemy catch even a single breath of fresh air. He feels confident in the strategy, ignoring the target's job class, as long as they can bury him under an endless pile of aggression. A jittery grin appears on his face while he hopes they can deplete half of Han's health before the reinforcements arrive. Suddenly, Han teleports through the air like a bolt of electricity, and carves through one of the sentries instantly, which leaves Jin gawkily staring at the scene, unable to wrap his tiny mind around the sudden turn of events. Han should have been immobile, but he is currently sprinting like a maniac and declaring that his abilities are finally ready for use. He begins erasing the minions from existence, launching newly acquired spheres of flame with terrifyingly accurate precision. Jin shrieks for his team to intervene, yet Han calmly notes he already warned them to leave before things got fatal. He becomes entirely psychotic, tearing through the opposition as if he were enjoying a particularly gruesome video game for children. While the survivors begin to flee, the leader continues barking instructions to stand their ground rather than running away. The syndicate boss abruptly steps up right behind Jin, praising his buddy for not folding under pressure. The boss promises to manage this mess personally, while Jin wonders when the cavalry arrives. The big cheese claims he's phoned his buddies, making Han's funeral their main goal, and shares the mission details like a spicy office meme. Fresh meat gathers, because a juicy new bounty drop, while Han just loiters there looking like a sleep paralysis demon on a coffee break. Their captain observes the pile of corpses Han stacked up impressively fast, yet assumes their 200 goons provide a sturdy safety net. Losing seems impossible to his delusional brain, so he advises Jin to chill out and quit sweating over the small stuff. Meanwhile, Han realizes his health bar is basically frozen because these losers fight like toddlers compared to that spicy Rufendel fellow. His healing stats are totally cracked, rendering their pathetic pokes useless, as he laughs about how Rufendel was actually a decent challenge. With a cocky smirk, he calculates that deleting 200 random dudes will be as easy as eating a giant chocolate muffin. Standing nearby, his sibling observes the messy slaughter. He panicking about her brother's mental state and general safety in this madness. Han suggests she should hop in and start hitting him as well, leaving her staring at him with a very baffled expression. He needs her participation, so she avoids looking shady by just idling there like a decorative garden gnome amidst the violent chaos. She questions if a lightning strike would be appropriate, and he encourages her to fry him without delay. She simply shrugs and decides to just follow his lead. She then hurls a jagged bolt at her brother. Just as the annoying game menu pings, he shouts for a timeout so he can read the fine print on his screen. However, he's already being barbecued by her magic, while the game engine declares he stumbled into a bizarrely rare character archetype. Her eyes flutter in confusion, while she wonders what kind of absolute nonsense is currently taking place. The interface screams he's hit peak anarchy, watching his criminal tattoo turn into a deep shade of charcoal black from his misdeeds. He anticipated this outcome eventually, though the timing feels incredibly rushed, as the game begins changing him into a celestial slaughtering star, while news of his sins travels fast, boosting his stats while his pupils shine like a hungry wolf's. Scanning his profile, he's labeled the ultimate psycho fueled by raw hate, which admittedly provides some pretty sweet perks for his bloody career path. Nevertheless, that specific job title feels slightly exaggerated, making him groan as he embraces his destiny as a full-time professional supervillain. While he continues slicing through the generic guards like warm butter, he realizes that every naughty deed he performs has consequences. The Sky Devil fan club's devotion keeps skyrocketing, and he spots a passive skill that looks perfect for bullying anyone with hero-styled protagonists, a thought that consumes him, while he enthusiastically turns the nearby troops into thinly sliced deli meat for his own amusement. Simultaneously, the confused victims can tell if he's a swordsman or a mage, while Han chuckles that he's still technically unemployed and lacks a class. This simple statement paralyzes the guards with fear as they question his humanity, while the director asks Jiang what their next move is. Jiang senses the situation has become incredibly spacey, assuming the kid is hiding his job title to keep his vulnerabilities a secret. The old man understands that every class possesses a glaring at Jill's heel. Consequently, the leader orders Jin to tag along so they can handle this unruly teenager personally and end his reign of terror. Text, end. That fellow bellows toward Han, tagging that man a disgusting outlaw, plus promises to locate that vulnerability and terminate that pathetic lie. However, Han mangles those opponents without trying, mentioning that having any sort of flaw is purely imaginary personally, stretching his limbs while surrounded by cadavers. He abruptly realizes that lacking any wide-reaching magical blast is his primary shortcoming. That guy groans, believing he must farm experience rapidly to purchase anything. Then his sibling proposes performing some clinical trials together. He lifts an eyebrow, questioning her intent, so she explains he likely unlocked a unique vocation objective. The duo ventures inside that creepy basement, and she suggests he prepare himself while she activates several supernatural steroids. That girl launches some electricity toward that man, effectively shaving away a tiny portion regarding his vitality. During this moment, that man experiences genuine agony, comparing her strike toward Rufandel's ultimate move whenever she becomes fully powered. Despite the massive stinging, his recovery rate is comical, causing him to suspect that croaking is essentially out of the question. That lady continues hurling strikes upon strikes in his direction, declining to quit. That girl keeps striking that fellow with magic, plus just as he eventually reaches the edge of actually passing away, she drops from cure fatigue. Then the interface eventually identifies his secret title, the Supreme Lethal Astrode Entity, which necessitated 60 minutes concerning that female reducing his health pool significantly. The boy is extremely exhausted to notice that fresh title, assuming this belonged to that mission, which proved completely true. That guy represents the Supreme Lethal Astrode Entity currently. As ghouls begin approaching, he opts for exterminating those pests, and instructs that lady to remain seated. The computer engine starts barfing out all sorts of nonsensical pop-up garbage, although she notices he is acting like none of this legendary stuff is even remotely cool. She observes him nonchalantly turning those bony warriors into white dust. He elects to travel further into the darktomb. Consequently, that warrior mentions his departure and suggests that female just contact him if trouble occurs. She agrees. Plus that computer screen mentions how that Supreme Lethal Astrode Entity has logged out, since she satisfied the requirements for that hidden final objective. That female frame starts shining as those power-ups arrive, shifting her into that lucky seventh cosmic being during that exact moment. Han remains standing in that spot pondering what the heck just transpired, while at another location, that man's sibling totally changes toward another physical shape while the software loads that girl with numerous extra bonuses. She feels totally bamboozled by that abrupt jump regarding her combat prowess. Returning to the physical world, inside the Federation's meeting hall, Chief Hardlabor expresses appreciation toward everybody for their attendance via a polite gesture and claims the role of that coalition's chief, then exhales, offering regrets about discussing these topics during a physical gathering, plus explains how that group currently faces massive trouble. That extreme red mission flopped like a wet pancake when the lights went out on their intel, causing every merchant group to bail and leave the gang looking like a kicked puppy. A massive firing spree is coming, and the grunts are busy trash talking the chaotic jerk who ruined their lives while they sharpen their metaphorical pitchforks in the shadows. Everyone assumes the boss has finally lost his marbles under the stress, yet he starts giggling like a madman because his secret master plan is actually working perfectly. After issuing a sincere regret, he explains the dark mission continues, and although the finish line is a mystery, he vows a massive payout is coming for every person. That promise should stop the mutiny, and the creepy geezer plans for a better reunion later since he can always replace these losers with the endless line of desperate recruits. Hissing up to those merchant guilds is the top priority right now, so he sinks into his vibrating chair to brainstorm ways to win back their sweet cash. He jumps into Olympus while grumbling that dying with his minions would have been easier than fixing his garbage reputation, which is currently stinkier than a pile of dirty laundry. He will risk it all, because murdering that punk is the only fix, even if he has to spend the billion credits he and the board members swiped like common thieves. While sliding into the simulation, he figures $1 billion gold is plenty to turn Khan into a man with a giant bullseye on his head. As soon as the simulation starts, he enters a nearby drinking establishment to find some specialized help. A staffer provides him a very stiff, formal head nod. The employee looks quite intrigued by why an old man arrived today. That senior citizen nudges an image across the bar, submitting a formal contract for a hit to the legendary Murder Veil Squad. The employee gazes at the picture, twitching an eyebrow, because the target looks like he eats stone for breakfast. With a simple shrug, the employee claims those killers are capable, then inquires if the mountain of cash is prepared. Without even blinking, he tosses a cool billion gold on the counter. The staffer promises that 72 hours is enough to make the target a memory. He is fully aware those elite killing organizations are the best around, meaning that troublemaking Brad is going to be pulverized very soon. Vaporizing such a massive fortune so rapidly is painful, yet he anticipates a mountain of cash once that target is finally erased from existence. Since points will soon be falling from the sky, this is a genius play, and he wanders out of the safe area into the dangerous wilderness like a brave turkey. He expects a long wait, but as soon as he hits the trees, his head gets detached from his shoulders faster than a speeding bullet. He drops dead immediately, and he realizes he just became the victim of a very efficient professional hit. His mind is lagging, because he did not feel a single thing, and then a system window appears to tell him he is officially a ghost. The message says he is stuck in spirit mode until he quits, leaving him hovering around like a lost balloon at a sad birthday party. He spins his spectral body around to find a guide in a mask. The stranger casually tosses a card on the floor, showing off the logo of the Black Floral Assassins. He gawks at the paper, having absolutely no clue why those killers hunted him down. The hidden guy whispers that this is just the warm-up, and that his boss gave the green light to butcher him. Over at the other assassin base, the lackey tells the chief he passed the contract to the Black Floral Group exactly as they had discussed earlier. That chief believes his mark has already kicked the bucket, likely decaying in multiple parts. A triumphant smirk crept over his features as he realized this request provided the perfect excuse to finally make his move. The flustered subordinate protested that they could easily have dealt with the old man themselves, only to have the leader abruptly rise to his feet. He projected an intimidating presence, causing the whole room to immediately freeze in place. He snarled for the man to close his mouth and follow directions, unless he specifically wanted to die at that very second. The red-haired leader, radiating a presence so intense it felt like the floor was vibrating. He announced he would personally deal with the contract, then ordered the subordinate to spread the news, causing the man to gasp in relief that he hadn't lost his head. Stepping into the open air, the red-haired leader mused that the moment had arrived for the world to witness the true evil of Han. He defounded and led Murder Veil for 3 decades, enduring countless perils, but the absolute evil had been striving for hadn't yet reached its potential. He believed restrictions were limiting his power, but recognized that was his burden alone. The second elder, Han, aimed to judge whether Han actually deserved the label of absolute ruler. Elsewhere, Han's jaw dropped as he processed the fact that his sister had already skyrocketed all the way to level 30. She grinned broadly, explaining that since changing her class, her levels had skyrocketed uncontrollably. She proudly announced herself as the 7th constellation pure white mage, already standing at level 31. He highlighted her lack of step-up points, but she simply waved away the concern, claiming she no longer needed them after securing her position as the 7th constellation. She decided this feeling explained why people obsessed over class upgrades. Realizing how incredibly awesome the power felt, then thanked him for his help. She understood completely that his contribution made this success possible, while Han felt dizzy, concluding she likely changed classes simply from striking him a single time. If that were true, he decided, he must truly be an evil presence. She proposed a joint hunting trip, but he quickly realized that if every constellation could level so effortlessly without using step-up points, his future looked grim. All he desired was a quiet life filled with fine dining and relaxation, but at this pace, his sister hitting level 99 was definitely on the table. She had been in his party during the battle within the darkness field he created. He equipped her with cognitive impairment gear, enabling direct whispering, and preventing a public chat message from revealing her identity. She then politely requested permission to keep striking him occasionally. At that very moment, a system message appeared, warning him that she had officially achieved the status of a platinum-ranked hero. He concluded that if she could level to platinum simply by whittling down his health, this would quickly become a huge source of unwanted publicity for him. He gave her permission to keep striking, but cautioned her to hold back and avoid killing him. She brightened instantly, her grin turning playful and mischievous as she teased that she hoped to be the one to eventually finish him off, because hitting him had already provided insane level boosts. She asked, with a predatory look in her eyes, if she could just kill him already. He gently reminded her that he was, in fact, her actual sibling, but she countered that it was simply a game, and they would divide the rewards just as they always did. He then told her that if a time ever arrived when he needed to meet his end, he would permit her to be the one to finish him off. The prospect of murdering her sibling caused her immense joy. He only consented because his own curiosity was piqued, but he couldn't stop wondering internally why she seemed so incredibly thrilled to end his life. He opted to ignore the thought, and simply found relief in her happiness, which stemmed from achieving constellation status. A couple of days quickly passed, and she eliminated another Blackbeard as easily as swatting a fly. They effortlessly cleared the dungeon as a team without even working up a sweat. She acquired some rare loot, and he instructed her to keep it safe. He brought up his personal status display, thinking that the time had finally arrived for him to gain a level, but realized he was still missing a tiny sliver of experience to advance. Perched right on the very precipice, he decided he would go hunt down a few more monsters while his partner went to fetch vital elixirs and necessary supply. He told her to stay alert and absolutely avoid dropping any of the valuable spoils. She casually waved him off, promised a swift return, and then departed. He figured her errand would require about 10 minutes, and if he could eliminate enough monsters in that window, he would level up immediately. But from nowhere, a crushing aura descended upon him, and a voice pierced through the air, proclaiming, "Absolute ruler of the Sky Devil." Yurhan materialized instantly behind him, pressing a blade against his throat. He introduced himself as the Second Elder and announced that his time was officially finished. This encounter was supposedly a test to see if he was truly worthy of the Absolute Ruler title, a test he had failed miserably. He would die here and now, and the Murder Veil organization would lose no time in issuing the kill order against him. His internal system immediately chimed with a new quest, titled Second Elder Yurhan's Ambush. The quest difficulty rating flashed status, causing the system to begin blaring high priority warning alerts. The system alerts pointed out that Yurhan held the top position in stealth and ambush skills among all 12 formidable Sky Devil Elders. Han's assigned task was therefore to defeat the Second Elder, Yurhan, and subsequently earn his recognition. Another notification popped up instantly. This one warned him that failing to gain the support of the Absolute Ruler would plunge him into an extremely precarious situation. He pondered how this was supposedly a secondary quest branching from the main Return of the Absolute Ruler narrative, yet it carried its difficulty rating. Considering his own sister attained constellation status merely by punching him, he realized there was an extremely high chance he was actually the primary villain in this entire narrative. If he assumed all the other constellations didn't require step-up points, just like his sister, they would experience rapid growth with ridiculous new capabilities, potentially surpassing level 90. In the absolute worst case scenario, if he were forced to face every constellation individually, then it made perfect sense that the system would throw sus-rated quests at him to ensure cosmic equilibrium. He turned to face Yurhan, who ordered him to retrieve his weapon. Han internally realized that this guy had already figured out his current limitations. Yurhan knew perfectly well that he wasn't currently equipped with a weapon. Han inwardly questioned the entire logic of having to prove anything to this particular individual. Yurhan stared at him, trying to figure out Han's actual intent. Han deduced that if Yurhan genuinely desired to murder him, he wouldn't be wasting time engaging in this ridiculous conversation. That just confirmed Yurhan was another loyal subordinate hoping for the Sky Devil's return, which Han considered quite typical for such an individual. He then reminded Yurhan that he was currently subject to a special limitation. This limitation, he added, was on the brink of being removed. Yurhan slid his knife away, so Han decided to continue his act, admitting that he was obviously currently frail, pathetically weak, in fact, which explained why the process of eliminating this cursed restriction was taking so very long. He assumed everyone was waiting with bated breath for him to finally return anyway. If they could just exercise a little more patience, he absolutely promised to become their glorious, absolute ruler. He held absolutely zero doubts regarding that outcome, yet, he still questioned why Yurhan seemed so insistent on crushing even the smallest possibility of success. He comprehended that Yurhan was operating with a certain sense of urgency, yet he asked if the Second Elder might not regret this decision at some point in the future. Yurhan fell completely silent after processing the statement. Han realized, with one glance at his face, that the man was swallowing every word of his nonsense. Therefore, this was the perfect moment to finalize the manipulation. He explained that he understood Yurhan likely viewed him as completely insignificant at this very moment, but in a very short amount of time, he would achieve complete mastery over the heaven-shattering ghost art inherited from his master. In exactly 10 minutes, Yurhan's eyes widened instantly as he repeated the technique's name, demanding clarification if Han was truly referring to the legendary heaven-shattering ghost art. Yurhan demanded to know if he was being completely serious. Han confirmed he was, explaining that Yurhan only needed to provide him with a few extra minutes. He decided to demand direct proof, choosing to confirm the claim with his own two skeptical eyeballs. Yurhan activated his invisibility cloak, announcing he'd lurk close by and generously grant precisely 10 minutes on the clock. A system prompt appeared, informing him he had a strict 10-minute deadline. Compliments of Yahello's benevolence. He let out a sharp gasp of air, savoring the feeling of relief now that he had managed to secure a precious few moments of extra time. He was so close to leveling up, just a few more monsters, and had hit the target. He stepped outside the instance to hunt. He calculated that with his abysmal -99 luck statistic, creatures would likely be practically lining up to be defeated. He expected an easy victory, but the moment he emerged, he was hit with a dose of reality as he frantically ran around and discovered a complete lack of enemies. Under normal circumstances, at least a stray bear or a wandering skeleton would be casually hanging out nearby. Tears began to sting his eyes as he questioned the universe timing, wondering why everything deserted him during this critical moment. Ultimately collapsing into full-blown hysterics, he yelled at the heavens for leaving him totally empty-handed precisely when the stakes were highest. A system notification flashed, showing only 30 seconds remained. He briefly entertained the thought that perhaps challenging Yahello to a direct battle would have been the superior tactical choice after all. Then he vividly recalled how Yahello had nearly carved him into pieces in the blink of an eye, swiftly dismissing the possibility that he could have possibly survived. The system provided another update, 20 seconds remaining on the clock. A wave of panic washed over him as he scrambled to find a new justification for a time extension, but he knew any nonsense he spouted would fail. He didn't believe Yahello would offer him even a single inch of additional space. Suddenly, his sister appeared seemingly from thin air. She cheerfully explained she'd been tracking him down for a while. He barked at her to leave instantly, insisting the area was too hazardous. She simply stared at him in utter confusion. Then, she sprinted directly at him, leading a massive stampede of creatures right behind her. She announced that she had put in significant effort to drag every single one of those creatures here. At first, he simply gawked at her in utter astonishment. Then, he let out a laugh resembling a complete lunatic, instantly surging forward with newfound purpose. She watched in utter bewilderment as he sprinted right past her, heading straight for the horde. He yelled at her to escape first, and promised to reward her handsomely once the situation was finally resolved. He tore a path directly through the dense throng of creatures. He was slaughtering them left and right without mercy. He finally leveled up to 40 exactly moments before the timer officially expired. Now that he had reached the required level, he didn't hesitate to activate his new skill as the second elder suddenly materialized behind him, casually remarking that he shouldn't be falling behind. The system interfaces flashed with a brilliant golden light, confirming he had successfully cleared all prerequisites and unlocked the path to heaven. Shattering ghost technique. A powerful burst of golden radiance surged from his body, granting him significantly more influence over the Sky Devil. In addition, he now possessed a distinct advantage in his physical specifications. He grumbled to himself that the timing was incredibly tight, but he felt completely confident that even Yahello had absolutely no grounds left for complaint. The title of Murderous Constellation finally solidifies, making him a proper space villain, and he's totally baffled about the next ridiculous stunt the system is pulling. Just like that, the system decides he's officially the absolute evil, causing a chaotic wave of raw, untamed power to erupt from his very core. The second elder completely locks up when it dawned on him that the guy standing there genuinely embodies pure, utter malice. He forces a nervous chuckle, figuring he should have seen this coming, yet being labeled as the absolute evil still felt strangely nauseating. He pulls up his character screen immediately, confirming the new status that brands him as the absolute evil. He finds a whole new arsenal of skills piling up, realizing his ghost heart technique has broken through its previous limits. The system alerts went into overdrive, hitting him with a non-stop barrage of powerful upgrades and ridiculous new abilities. The second elder's legs give out completely, sending him tumbling to the ground. He humbly bows his head, desperately pleading for forgiveness for ever questioning him, but the protagonist simply reassures Yahello that it's okay. He admits he probably would have had doubts if their roles were switched, feeling a sense of satisfaction that he was finally accepted as Yahello's master. Beneath his serene expression, he was already plotting, determined to acquire Murder Veil for himself. As Yahello pledged his complete loyalty, he finishes the task with effortless precision, giving himself a pat on the back for effectively dispatching the elder, leaving only one more to contend with. He was just starting to tell Yahello to step up, when his phone blew up with messages from his sister, forcing him to immediately check on her well-being. She waved off his concern and redirected him to prioritize the important stuff, specifically asking me if he had seen the recent system announcements, to which he agreed everything was completely bonkers. Word quickly spread that the absolute evil had appeared, sending the entire player base into chaos as everyone frantically tried to track down this new villain to simplify their quests. She proposed they hunt the absolute killer together, cautioning that his chaotic reputation would likely be reset. which felt deeply awkward since she was essentially discussing him as if he were someone else. He then mentioned his stats had already surpassed 100 because of her help, prompting her to demand the exact increase, which he casually revealed was 19 points. This absolutely stunned her, as acquiring even 1 point in that state was supposedly unheard of, making her eyes go wide in disbelief. She mentally questioned what ridiculous stunt he had managed to pull now, concluding he probably just stumbled into another unbelievable stroke of luck through sheer coincidence. She managed to offer congratulation, even though she clearly couldn't wrap her head around it, feeling her heart pound so furiously she felt close to fainting. Therefore, she exited the virtual world to regain her composure back in reality. She always knew her brother wasn't exactly typical, but this new development was just over the top. It was all getting a bit overwhelming, so she shook her head in disbelief, and left for a quick walk to clear her mind. Returning to the game, he mused that this situation was apparently too much even for her. Wondering exactly how he was ever going to confess that he was actually the absolute evil, he decided to postpone that particular headache, choosing instead to concentrate on claiming his class quest rewards, and instructed Yahello to resume their progress. He secretly hoped to receive the entirety of Murder Vale as a reward, knowing it would simplify battles against constellations and provide an easy cash flow. The second elder started by mentioning he had some information to convey, so the protagonist gave him a quick nod to proceed. Yahello then began to provide details regarding Murder Vale's current capabilities and status, but before he could finish that thought, a collection of uninvited guests suddenly arrived, causing the second elder to vanish instantly into stealth mode, while the protagonist clicked his tongue, frustrated at being interrupted during such a vital moment. A contingent of soldiers marched forward purposefully, loudly addressing him by the name Remtadian. Their leader roared, promising a substantial financial reward to anyone who successfully eliminated Remtadian. He scowled, genuinely confused about why these complete buffoons insisted on mislabeling him as Remtadian yet again. He let out a deep sigh, convinced these simpletons never got tired of repeating the exact same tired routine. The approaching night misjudged Han's situation, believing him to be isolated, and ordered his soldiers to charge at Eubar. The objective was to bring honor to the Bavarian order. Han calmly watched the large group of soldiers rushing straight toward him. Usually, after activating the heaven-shattering ghost art, he could sense how panicked non-player characters became, but these guys only made him sigh internally. While this was technically his first clash with knights, he was fairly certain these were the absolute bottom-tier fighters available. The battle concluded so quickly that Han felt slightly disappointed. While the commander looked like his circuits had completely fried, the commander began swearing profusely, begrudgingly acknowledging that Han had probably just annihilated their entire company. Despite the defeat, he felt absolutely certain Han couldn't have emerged entirely unharmed, so he lunged forward like a maniac. He reached out and snatched Han tightly by the neck, only to have his forceful grip somehow neutralized before making contact. Han let out a slight laugh, genuinely impressed, and began to speculate whether this fool was actually wielding a decent artifact. The commander assumed Han was completely depleted of energy, but Han merely offered a bored shoulder shrug, and instantly crushed his skull with a single blow. A holographic notification appeared, announcing he had successfully eliminated the Viscount of Bavaria. Han let out a thoughtful noise, reflecting that this heaven-shattering ghost art truly was ridiculously overpowered, especially considering all the intense movement. He felt like he hadn't expended a single calorie of effort, and with every single soldier now neutralized, he decided it was time to collect his due, so he roughly pulled out the second elder and demanded he continue with the explanation. Right as he prepared to relax, a new voice piped up from behind him, showering him with compliments about his exceptional power. Han immediately felt irritated, wondering which fresh lunatic had arrived to bother him now. He snapped at the mysterious individual to reveal themselves, prompting a figure cloaked in robes to emerge from the shadows. Han demanded his name, questioning if this person was another assassin sent to eliminate him, assuming he was likely yet another bounty hunter. However, the cloaked figure claimed he was slightly different from a hunter, clarifying he was only there to kill Han, and then convert him into his personal servant. The robed villain then displayed Rufandel, manipulating him like a marionette to show that the former fighter was now enslaved. Han instantly recognized the exact jerk who had murdered him in a previous life. He stared intently, his gaze fixed elsewhere, completely failing to register the criminal's appearance. While the professor watched on, Professor Daly emitted a frustrated sigh, admitting that Han was truly in a hopeless situation this time around. The cloaked figure nodded in agreement, confidently stating that Han was undeniably destined to become his enslaved property. He sported a chilling, predatory grin, while rambling enthusiastically about his good fortune in acquiring such high-quality corpses without charge. He promised to treat him like a prized possession once the subjugation was complete. Then he began to cast a spell, and the entire squad he'd just finished turning into floor decorations promptly bounced back to life. The Viscount and his formerly deceased henchmen were back on their feet, which led Han to deduce this clue. Necromancer must be a professional party pooper for a slaughterfest. The newly reanimated troops fixed him with a gaze that screamed second attempt. He notes that this guy must have a hidden class because, unlike standard zombies, these guys still had their personalities and memories. Oddly enough, his reading methods like heaven shards or ghost shards failed completely. They seemed potentially even more powerful now. The Viscount started referring to the cloaked individual as his new master, having been bound by a soul contract during the resurrection process. He swore absolute fealty, confirming Han's suspicion that this necromancer had some seriously busted magical abilities. The Viscount turned back to him, absolutely certain that Han's chances were now zero, and ready to end the fight. Just as the undead were about to pounce, they suddenly froze solid. Han raised an eyebrow, wondering what the hiccup was. The system helpfully explained that since he held the title of absolute evil, he had incredible authority over black magic entities. His ridiculously powerful heaven-shattering ghost arts energy was flat out, rejecting the necromancer's control. The cloaked man began sweating profusely, utterly confused as to why his undead minions weren't obeying. He kept screaming orders, but nothing worked. Han ended up completely hijacking control over the undead, thanks to the combination of his absolute evil title and heaven-shattering ghost arts power. He himself was startled by the unexpected power grab, realizing that these reanimated soldiers would now follow whatever he instructed. Annoyance settling in, he simply commanded all of them to just perish once more. Rufindel recognized he was about to die for the second time, all while the necromancer desperately screamed at him to ignore Han's commands. Han smir, realizing Rufindel was now truly undead, not just temporarily reanimated. Flashing a wicked grin, Han verified that Rufindel was also completely subservient to him, so he commanded Rufindel to immediately drop and perform some jumping jacks. Rufindel made a valiant attempt to resist, but a crackling purple lightning bolt immediately slammed into him, forcing him to jump around like an absolute buffoon. The necromancer stood by, completely panicking about his next course of action. Han then shifted his attention to the necromancer, asking him precisely how old he happened to be. The confused necromancer instantly blurted out, "I'm 19," before frantically attempting to retract the statement. Han's sight, declaring that his undead minions were completely worthless and asking what his next brilliant move would be. Han clarified that he generally avoids killing anyone who hasn't tried to kill him first, causing the necromancer to immediately beg for mercy. Feeling unusually magnanimous for a moment, Han gave him a dismissive wave, and the foolish necromancer scurried off immediately. Han then shifted his focus back onto the high-ranking criminal. Rufindel quickly started attempting to smooth things over, trying to pass off the whole attempted murder as just a simple misunderstanding. He abandoned his previous approach quicker than a politician changed his stances, suddenly referring to Han as his senior, and promising unwavering loyalty, like a very eager, slightly slobbery puppy just begging for a command. Han delivered a friendly reminder, emphasizing that if Rufindel ever considered betrayal, he would be instantly removed from existence, without even time to write a goodbye note. Rufindel agreed completely, a self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips, recognizing that he had just acquired a new, incredibly dangerous plaything, saving him the trouble of visiting the pet store. Now, let's switch gears and explore what's happening outside the virtual simulation. One particular player quickly disconnected from Olympus, emerging back into reality. She was visibly trembling, whispering about how absolutely terrifying that encounter had been, genuinely relieved she hadn't ended up as digital dust. She couldn't understand how anybody could possibly exceed her necromantic abilities, a feat previously thought impossible, wondering if he was the specific person her mysterious teacher had mentioned long ago. Her master had once advised her to keep in mind that a single, genuine monarch of this realm would eventually emerge from the shadows. She was expected to dedicate herself to his cause, enabling him to eliminate any opposition and seize complete control over the continent. Now pondering if this guy was the prophesied sovereign destined for domination. A quick glance at her mobile device revealed the hour, prompting her to mutter a quick expletive about her tardiness, before sprinting away from the spot. Switching back to the virtual world, the second elder materialized, and announced that he had two more crucial items to discuss, insisting on continuing with his lengthy presentation. Han, genuinely impressed by the elder's relentless dedication, urged him to accelerate the explanation and wrap things up quickly before yet another unforeseen interruption occurred. The elder began detailing the organization known as Murder Veil, specifying that it currently employed two class assassins who possessed the capability to eliminate high ranking imperial functionaries with ease. The ranks also included 20th class executioners, 100 B-plus murderers, and an overwhelming number of C-class thugs that weren't worth cataloging individually. Currently, countless individuals are submitting applications to join the organization, though many perish during the rigorous screening process, and certain intelligence reports suggest Murder Vale maintains connections with nobility throughout the territory. After 3 decades of relentless work, the group has accumulated 2 billion gold coins for operational expenses, supplemented by another 4 billion gold in personal savings belonging to him directly. This amounted to an astonishing total of 6 billion gold, all of which was now Hen's property, signaling that the difficult mission to earn the second elder's respect was successfully accomplished. He promptly claimed the additional 6 billion gold reward, experiencing a deep sense of satisfaction mixed with the feeling that his mental processes were overloading trying to comprehend the sheer scale of the amount. The surprise was momentarily visible on his expression, though he quickly regained his poker face to ensure the elder wouldn't realize his shock. Nodding confidently, he informed the elder that he admired his dedication, suggesting he retain 2 billion gold specifically to ensure Murder Vale's continued operations without interruption. Regarding the remaining 4 billion, he specified that the funds would be allocated to benefit both the Murder Vale activities and his Skytevil group organization. Upon hearing this generous declaration, tears began to form in Yerhen's eyes, prompting him to dedicate his complete loyalty and service to Han. Regardless of where he went, Han began an internal victory dance, recognizing that his carefully crafted, completely deceptive compliments had somehow managed to achieve the exact result he desired. Having gained control of Murder Vale, he felt confident that all future quests and personal objectives were now securely in place, ready for exploitation. Yerhen then introduced one final topic for discussion, specifically addressing the mysterious third leader known as Lexar. According to reports, this particular elder possesses extreme levels of danger, unlike the relatively reasonable Yerhen. Lexar, apparently, wouldn't bother with polite notifications before attacking. His strikes would be precise and immediately fatal. Han quickly concluded that Lexar was likely also part of the assassination profession. The second elder validated his assumption, clarifying that Lexar actually ran the entire Black Floral Group organization. He momentarily froze, completely stunned by the information, then instructed Yerhen to pause for just a moment. Flipping through his system alerts, he noticed 2 constellations had already claimed their spots. Frankly, he couldn't care less who they were. If they dared to challenge him, he'd be delighted to see them try. His sister holds the rank of the 7th constellation, and the fearsome Murder Vale was already tucked away in his inventory. A sudden barrage of texts from his sister made him raise an eyebrow, wondering what had gotten her so worked up. He assumed she'd returned home by now, yet a faint sense of unease lingered in the air. Perhaps she had discovered something about the new 1st and 2nd constellations, but Sia immediately shot down that assumption. No, this was far more crucial. She had recently bumped into a very close friend, and when the friend showed up, Tia greeted her with enthusiasm, while her friend, Si-song, offered a warm smile and inquired if she had waited a while. Just as Si-song attempted to initiate a quiet conversation with Sia, some random guy slithered up behind her and boldly requested her phone number. She politely declined his request, finding it unsettling that men would declare her their type despite never having met her before. She couldn't shake the feeling they were only interested in her appearance, which frankly turned her stomach, while Sia, conversely, didn't find it strange for someone to fall instantly smitten at first glance. In her opinion, Si-song was simply overly cautious around men. Si-song blushed slightly, defensively muttering that she certainly wasn't afraid. Si-song recalled how during the Academy Wars, everyone used to call her the Ice Princess. Sia understood completely why Si-song behaved the way she did. Sia then asked what Si-song had been doing with herself lately. Si-song leaned in conspiratorially, claiming it was top secret information for their ears only. She revealed the whole story, and by the time she finished, she was glowing with satisfaction, certain she had made the correct decision to share. She appreciated how her friend listened intently without interrupting. They exchanged farewells, with Sia reminding her to send a text once she got home safely, and a short while later, Sia suddenly recalled making Si-song swear on her life not to share this information with a soul. Panic set in as her mind raced, trying to figure out what to do next, deciding her brother needed to hear this immediately. Back at home, Han pondered what exactly his sister was so desperate to reveal, remembering how she had dragged him to a capsule cave and whispered urgently there. But because other people might listen in, she raced home to discuss it privately, accepting a glass of water from Han as she dramatically sighed about being exhausted. She started explaining that this was information nobody else possessed, and she truly never expected her friend to provide such valuable intel, keeping her explanation concise. Everyone assumes the absolute evil is fated to fight the constellation's soul, but surprisingly, there exists a purer class specifically created to serve him. Apparently, her friend just received a quest to become this servant, and her friend also happens to be known as the absolute necromancer. When she finished speaking, Han recognized the critical nature of the information, yet he worried about the danger Sesam faced for revealing such secrets, questioning if even hearing it put him at risk. His sister explained that Sesam shared the secret only because they were practically soulmates, and she believed her brother deserved to know everything. Given that he is the actual absolute evil himself, Han just completely froze in place, feeling flustered and embarrassed, wondering what on earth she was getting at. She knew already he was the absolute evil, but she was patiently waiting for him to finally confess on his own. To her, it had been obvious for ages. He vanished for 20 years to train in some mysterious, strange place, and wherever he appeared, dark creatures mysteriously popped up from nowhere. He was ridiculously strong for someone at his current level, plus had already maxed out his chaotic alignment stats. When the system announced the absolute evil was born, his stats immediately skyrocketed. Not to mention, she became the 7th constellation right after trying to knock him out. She figured it would be downright nonsensical if he weren't the absolute evil. She understood his perspective entirely, but a small part of her still felt genuinely hurt. Han, however, realized he had no possible way to defend himself. He put on a somewhat pathetic little performance, fancying that she had truly managed to figure him out. He had anticipated her eventually catching on, but she thought he looked like a total goof right then. Blind dumb. She assured him that she had not told her friend about him being the absolute evil, nor had she revealed her identity as a constellation. It was very late for this warning, but she reminded Han that exposure of either identity meant total ruin for both of them. Han told her she made a good point, while Saya pondered meeting Sesam properly soon to finally tell her the truth. Han had gleaned something truly useful from this entire exchange. He wouldn't actually be forced to take on the constellations all by himself. Now he just needed to figure out exactly how to put that new advantage to good use. The following day, high up on Let Me Mountain, Han remembered his sister mentioning her friend was only 19 and already dabbling in necromancy. The girl had dropped out of the academy, and was currently level 14. She had even given him a mask to keep his face hidden, considering he was on the run from both the Empire and the Union simultaneously. He knew he had to keep his guard up so nothing sensitive leaked out. He considered this 19-year-old necromancer, wondering if she could possibly be the same person he had encountered earlier. Rufindel was level 50, so someone at 14 couldn't possibly control him. Maybe she had a hidden class, but even with that, it still seemed impossible. Han finally met up with his sister and her friend deep within the thick jungle. Sesam locked eyes with Han, and he was completely caught off guard by the recognition as well. Both of them instantly realized that they had definitely met before. Sesam stood there in complete shock. She blurted out, "Big bro," and his eyes immediately began to well up with emotion. He told her she absolutely should not call her savior big bro, but just let it slide. Sesam turned beet red when Han pointed out that she was actually a girl, especially since the last time they spoke. She sounded entirely different. She got flustered, quickly explaining that she only spoke like that because she assumed all necromancers needed to act tough, but now she just felt incredibly awkward. Meanwhile, Sia was shocked that Han already knew her friend. He simply shrugged, saying their paths had just happened to cross by chance. Sesam thought the situation felt completely surreal. Perhaps it was fate. Sia had told her Han was deeply connected to the absolute evil, and Sesam started to seriously wonder if he might be the absolute evil himself. She asked her friend Sia how she actually knew Han. Han introduced himself, bluntly, as the absolute evil, and Sia revealed to Sesam that she was actually his sister. She also happened to be the 7th constellation. All of this information absolutely slammed Sesam like a fast-moving freight train. She stood frozen in shock for a moment before letting out a high-pitched scream like a complete idiot, demanding an answer for exactly why Sia had kept this information hidden from her. She couldn't understand why Sia chose this particular moment to reveal everything, and Sia quickly offered an apology. Sia explained that her brother deserved privacy before she told anyone, but now she trusts Sesam completely, so she shared the secret. Sesam suddenly realized that Han was the older brother of her best friend, causing her entire body to instantly seize up with jitters. She immediately wished she had chosen a better outfit that day. Sia rolled her eyes hard, annoyed her friend was panicking over such a silly concern. Sesam started crying like a little kid, assuring Han she definitely was not usually this utterly pathetic. Han decided to take her word for it, recalling his sister said Sesam looked gorgeous, though he still viewed her as just a child. Han quickly cut to the important part, explaining none of that mattered, and reminded her about her new quest to serve the absolute evil. Sesam nodded in agreement, and presented him with a scroll, explaining it was something left for her by her old master. He took a close look at the object, immediately recognizing it as a type of map. Suddenly, one specific part of the map caught his eye, causing his expression to change completely in surprise. Back when Han was completely submerged in that brutal training regimen, his master had suddenly ordered him to come directly to this location. He was still neck deep in those insane drills back then, but apparently, the old teaser had something crucial to share with him. Now he stared at the map in his hands, his mind racing. Every detail on the paper and the specific marked spot exactly matched the information his master gave him. One glance confirmed its connection to the absolute evil, and it screamed quest material for the heaven-shattering ghost art. But the clincher was the specific emblem sketched into the corner. There was zero doubt. It was unmistakably the heaven-shattering ghost art symbol. They called it Black Flame. His master once told him this mark defined who he truly was now, serving as his entire identity. He knew damn well there was no possible chance it ended up here by accident, figuring other players must also have landed this class quests tied to the absolute evil. It made perfect sense, as he couldn't possibly face Constellation all by himself. Besides, anyone serving absolute evil had no shot facing it directly. As he silently pieced together all the information, plotting furiously in his head, Sisong interrupted, asking exactly what he was thinking about. He returned the map to her with a shrug, saying everything finally made sense. Apparently, he truly had become the absolute evil, but for the moment, they absolutely had to get going. She asked where exactly they were heading next. He mentioned Seiya had told him Sisong was still stuck at level 14, so their first order of business was to grind her up a few levels. Several days quickly passed by. Seiya obliterated a monster using her lightning bolt, destroying a giant black bear as Sisong watched, eyes sparkling, thinking her friend was a complete badass. Standing slightly behind them, Rufendel just gained a level and wondered when the heck he had last even managed to level up. Han catches him standing around doing absolutely nothing and questions his life choices, which snaps the guy instantly back to attention. He immediately drops into a low bow, scrambling to grab the valuable bluestones like a perfectly trained canine, before offering them up to Han. Han stares at him, convinced he's observing some kind of deity, deciding to cut him some slack while Rufendel privately fumes about becoming the most humiliating fetch quest sidekick ever. But even Rufendel can argue with the facts. Han's powers are simply broken, providing everything from instant healing and buffs to guaranteed treasure drops and level boosts, basically the complete cheat package. And now Rufendel finds himself disgustingly satisfied with this pathetic life, immediately berating himself internally because this level of degradation should absolutely be against the rules. Han asks Sisong what level she currently reached. She confirms she hit level 19, so they continue their grind, and he observes that she truly is an absolute necromancer with a hidden specialization supporting pure evil. Seiya asks Sisong if she went out hunting all by herself, and Sisong turns bright red as she sheepishly admits that yes, she did exactly that, mainly because she has absolutely zero control over her abilities. He watches her stumble around and assumes she's just putting on an act of being clumsy and terrible in a fight, but he understands she's just trying to conceal her true, terrifying potential. She summons a massive group of skeletons, and he notes that her undead minions are significantly stronger than the usual garbage necromancers manage to conjure. She insists they are absolutely adorable, and he speculates that maybe all necromancers think their undead minions are cute or something, which he personally finds incredibly creepy. Most importantly, he realizes that both the sheer number of minions she can summon and her raw magical output are operating at a completely different scale compared to most necromancers. There really is no comparison whatsoever. Right now, he finds himself in a position where extreme caution regarding the Empire is absolutely essential. The elders might be tied up for now, but that doesn't mean he won't bring a few players into the mix if he gets desperate enough. She points her skeleton army at a black bear, and they chase it down, proceeding to tear it apart with ruthless, unfeeling efficiency. Sisong is quickly becoming his most valuable chess piece on the board, while both she and Seiya cheer excitedly about the skeleton's effortless win. He observes that Sisong's current quest precisely matches his own, being they both have to investigate the very same set of ruins. He remembers the quest originated directly from his Hellspawn boss, so naturally, the difficulty level will be absolutely bonkers nightmare tier, and just thinking about that master sends shivers down his spine. Heaven only knows what kind of apocalyptic disaster would occur if he attempted this quest alone, so all in all, he's incredibly relieved she agreed to team up. For the first time ever, his real life luck isn't completely awful and actively trying to destroy him. Suddenly, she ambushes him from behind and tackles him with a bare hug, yelling like a maniac that she finally reached level 20. Rufendel bursts out laughing, suggesting Han probably assumed a monster was jumping him, while Han himself is completely stunned because he's never seen her behave so unhinged. She tells him her level skyrocketed in record time, all thanks to him, and she genuinely can thank him enough for the power leveling service. He congratulates her, but immediately tells her to get off, pointing out that if he had instinctively reacted to the ambush, she would be completely flattened on the pavement right now. He turns to Rufendel, casually calling him his pet, and demands to know why he's slacking off again, causing Rufendel to flinch and scramble to gather the leftover loot. He says that since Seezong reached level 20, it's time to push forward with their main quest, which means heading to the Karganas Mountains in Luninex. He informs his sister and Seezong that since no one seems to be tracking them at the moment, they should go ahead and put on the Imperial wraps. He wants them to go ahead first and collect any intelligence they can find, while he and Rufendel, the max-level chaotic individuals, will catch up afterward by utilizing a teleportation wrap controlled by the Alliance. They nod and head out, and Rufendel nervously wonders if they will be okay considering their max chaotic alignment, but Han says probably not, yet they have no choice but to follow. Airships and blimps might save them a few coins, but they are incredibly sluggish, and who knows what sort of chaotic nonsense might decide to pop up during the trip. Even if it incinerates their savings, these teleporters are the most secure choice, especially the subsidized Alliance versions. However, these gates are rare as a polite gamer, and most portals will automatically reject anyone with a maximum criminal rating. The Great Alliance owns nearly every single travel hub, and they absolutely love hoarding that jurisdictional power under their greedy thumb. The female worker rotates toward the leader, insisting that his presence is required to assess this bizarre event. The chief demands an explanation. The employee mentions that a pair of notorious outlaws just appeared. Standing up, the captain tells her to hide, while he wears a very predatory grin. He assumes some high-level players just arrived, acting as the self-important director known as Captain I. Rufendel prays for a miracle, while Han assumes they are safe since combat is currently prohibited in this zone. Marching forward, the leader announces the destination is the Lugna Highlands, so they better have brought massive piles of gold. He notices their red names, and raises an eyebrow, leaning in for a much more intrusive inspection. He realizes the blueberry-headed fellow is actually Rufendel, who apparently brought a random servant for manual labor. Rufendel instantly starts his morning routine as planned, claiming he only brought the kid to scavenge heavy loot. Adhering to the secret plan established earlier, the veteran sticks to the screenplay by behaving like the superior officer. The captain giggles, thinking Rufendel should have picked a better helper than this clueless little newbie. Rufendel's eye twitches as he retorts that the quality of his human shield is none of the captain's business. The captain shrugs, noting that notorious supervillains pay a premium price of 13 million gold coins per head. Rufendel panics at the blatant extortion, but the smug captain tells the broke losers to leave. He suggests the discount Imperial Gate before remembering criminals are banned, then mocks them about their next move. Rufendel gnashes his teeth in anger while the captain feels certain that he has them trapped. He asks if the captain really needs to be so rude while demanding 30 million as a travel fee. The greedy leader looks at Han, wondering if he can squeeze even more money out of the desperate pair. While Rufendel bickers, Han gets a whisper. He sees the message is from the captain, who has discreetly opened a hidden chat channel. The officer guesses the boy hates his life as a slave, but he honestly finds the backstory irrelevant. However, he is happy to help if Han simply obeys every single one of his specific commands. A smirk forms on the young man's face, given that he is secretly howling with laughter inside. The captain assumes this fool fell for the trap, while Han initiates a pathetic sobbing performance regarding his miserable pet life. Seezong and Saya finally reach the Karkanas peaks, and she marvels at how these magical teleporters work quite efficiently. Sia beams while agreeing, yet her companion cannot stop fretting over Han's safety. She frets about whether he'll survive, understanding perfectly well that these private runners are famous for squeezing every last drop of gold out of high chaos targets. She's heard enough horror stories about these guys backstabbing their employers, but Sia just scoffs, explaining he's exactly the sort to snap the wrist of anyone stupid enough to attempt a betrayal. Seezong has to admit that behavior tracks perfectly with his personality, and she quickly changes the subject to wonder if calling him old man is still acceptable. She begins to tear up, muttering nervously that she keeps staring at the map but simply cannot figure out which way they were supposed to go, while Saya simply chuckles and assures her everything is fine because she already knows the route by heart. In another location, Han ponders ided, mentally estimating his power level around 40, which Han considers an embarrassingly low number for a supposed team captain. For a powerful organization like Ellen, the only conceivable explanation for him holding a luxurious captain role in portal management is because his aunt happens to be on Ellen's board of directors, meaning life has been nothing but a continuous effortless winning streak for him. From the moment he joined Ellen, he hasn't had to demonstrate his worth, with plum positions continually landing right in his lap. Promotions rolled in without effort, and because he was born wealthy and well-connected, he actually believes his success is due entirely to his own dance skill. Han internally judges this clueless idiot as hopelessly naive, observing how easily the captain is believing everything Han tells him. So Han decides to play the part perfectly, figuring the captain probably sees him as some clueless fool with absolutely zero idea about his own future prospects. Han smirks to himself, thinking Ives' attempts at manipulation are so unbelievably transparent it borders on pathetic. Han allows a small smirk to appear as he leans toward Rufendel, whispering that Captain Dumbass has already offered him a deal to stab them both in the back. Rufendel appears shocked, but Han quickly assures him that he is simply playing naive for the time being. They will talk more once they are safely on the raft, so Rufendel needs to act completely normal for now. Rufendel requests that Han fork over 6 million gold, and Han agrees without hesitation. Rufendel pretends to snap at Han for wasting so much time, even though internally, he's shaking in his boots from nerves. Thanks to their dramatic little performance, they secure passage on the raft, and finally arrive at the northern Karganis Mountains. The moment they leave the safe zone, Han notices the captain tailing them closely with his entire crew. The captain shouts at Han, ordering him to immediately start beating up Rufendel, while Han simultaneously whispers to Rufendel to brace himself for impact. Han activates his unique skill, hoping Rufendel will successfully fake being shocked and furious. While Rufendel silently prays the attack truly causes 0 damage, Han slams his fist into Rufendel, but his activated skill negates all damage from the strike. Rufendel is screaming on the inside, but maintains a furious expression, quickly throwing a return punch back at Han. Han pretends that he's completely fed up with being treated like the captain's personal pets. The two of them begin scrapping with gusto, and while they were fighting, the captain orders his men to immediately cast Dispel Magic so Rufendel cannot blink away or vanish. The henchmen successfully cast the spell, and immediately dive in, laying into Rufendel. Han watches from the sidelines, finding it hysterically funny that 5 different guys are ganging up on Rufendel like this, as the captain stealthily slips behind Han. Ibe thinks that since Han already handed Rufendel 6 million gold earlier, Rufendel must be acting as a temporary storage box for the loot. This works out perfectly for the captain, who wants those items, so he whips out his sword and charges straight for Rufendel. He is absolutely convinced that Rufendel's chaotic nature guarantees he will drop loot, hoping Han doesn't just keel over from a single blow after he finishes slicing Rufendel with his blade. Han spins around with a smug grin, landing a solid knuckle sandwich right on the guy's chin. Our fearless leader looks completely bugged. He barely avoids the hit by hopping backward like a startled frog. Reeling, he wonders if this is reality, because Han hitting that hard makes 0 sense. Perhaps he is a secret brawler, though his energy bar stays full unlike a typical warrior. Without any negative status alerts popping up, he assumes Han gambled his entire build on pure speed rather than raw power, which is the only logical explanation. Simultaneously, Han browses his menu, realizing his accidental suppression of power was just a fluke in the system. The loudmouth calls him a worm while spitting endless insults. Han stares back peacefully, wondering why the guy is whining after he was the one who swung first. In the background, Rufendel obliterates the mob, tossing a stray ganger directly at the leader's face like trash. This leaves the man baffled, causing his mental gears to halt. He suspects his reports were garbage, seeing as Rufendel is packing way more muscle than any human should. The goons shriek about being betrayed, while begging to run away, though Rufendel blocks their path. Smiling like a monster, he concludes their suffering with several devastatingly heavy blows. He cannot comprehend how he cleared the room so easily, firmly believing Han provided some absolutely ridiculous stat enhancements. At this moment, he feels such intense appreciation, he could probably retire right now without a single gripe. Observing Han still playing with the leader, Rufendel briefly questions why that annoying jerk has not been deleted yet. Han simply gestures, explaining that slaying the guy yields no rewards, because his luck is a tragic -90. Throughout this, the villain's mind is racing, attempting to decode whatever scheme these two lunatics are cooking up. Rufendel moves closer, providing a terrifying look that signals the noisy brat to pipe down and stay quiet. Han orders him to drain every cent from the jerk while he observes, so Rufendel asks if his survival is truly priced at a measly 6 million. Internally, he views this as the perfect moment to show his worth. While the weeping victim stammers an offer of 7 million, he frantically hikes the price higher until he is yelling about 100 million coins. Yet Han stays completely indifferent. He signals to aim for 130, hoping to appear like a trustworthy and efficient business partner. Rufendel projects a scary vibe, mentioning that being a backstabbing snake comes with a very heavy financial penalty. Due to the psychological stress they endure, he insists on 130 million as a reasonable settlement fee. Shaking like a leaf, the coward promises the full amount if they relocate to a secure area, which makes Rufindel laugh. He remarks that the idiot clearly underestimates the severity of his situation, instantly crushing the man's final dream of escape. He pays the fee instantly and attempts to flee, while Han raises his gaze to witness the hilarious getaway effort. The leader plots his future revenge for this embarrassment, assuming he can actually survive long enough to walk away. Han recognized this nuisance immediately, knowing full well this particular pest deserved nothing less than a maximum dose of painful retribution. Declaring this the final stop, Han watched as Rufindel hurtled forward, screaming something about becoming the self-appointed, utterly deranged high priest of righteous vengeance. While the terrified captain pleaded desperately for mercy, Rufindel secretly wished the poor sap might actually withstand the inaugural blow, just to spice things up a bit. Nevertheless, beneath the surface, he truly admired Han, embracing all the bizarre glory of his current state. When all was said and done, delivering a devastating, solitary punch, he flattened the captain instantly, feeling slightly annoyed that the fun had concluded before he even warmed up. Meanwhile, poor Ide was openly weeping, dramatically mourning his possessions strewn across the floor. Rufindel felt divinely favored, immediately commencing the spirited acquisition of every single valuable object available. The skipper attempted to repurchase one particular trinket for a ridiculous billion in coinage, a bid which Rufindel completely ignored. Noticing the peculiar weight, and hearing the captain's frantic bid, he dismissed the entire plea like a musudapite, never breaking his stride. Ide was left utterly flabbergasted, demanding to know if the thief grasped the treasure's true worth, but Rufindel couldn't be bothered less about his valuation. His sole objective involved presenting this bounty to the cherished master he worshipped, so Rufindel dumped the enormous pile near Han, mentioning the fallen captain had been willing to shell out a staggering $1 billion simply to recover one specific keepsake. Han began sifting through the stolen goods nonchalantly, but the second his gaze locked onto that highly prized possession, his brain almost suffered a massive electrical failure from pure astonishment, prompting both Han and Rufindel to inspect the mysterious satchel they had just acquired. Rufindel's expression twisted into a knot of confusion, clearly clueless about what exactly they had pilfered, while Han felt a persistent, deeply unsettling sensation. This artifact originated in the second round, an item people supposedly bankrupt themselves acquiring, yet holding it felt decidedly anticlimactic, like unwrapping socks. He promptly unzipped the container, the system instantly revealing its paltry treasures, a single iron handguard, plus a basic monster taming band. There was also a sizable stack of 500 million coins, which, even combined, hardly shouted, "I am worth a king's ransom and then some." Han briefly considered the probability of cleverly concealed or unlawfully transported goods, but within moments, concluded that fretting about it constituted a waste of precious time. Who cares? Han thought, turning toward Rufindel, and lightly suggesting a job proposal, 3 million gold if the big guy agreed to be his designated sidekick, or pet. Rufindel's expression suggested he had just been granted a front row seat to heaven, immediately vowing eternal allegiance in a performance that deserved its own trophy. With a wide smile, he announced plans to lounge around Renya, focus on power leveling, declaring all current property officially belonged to his master. High atop Mount Renya, Sia noticed a figure approaching, recognizing her own brother instantly, and hence simply nodded, pleased everyone had arrived without any noticeable damage. Sison quickly complimented Sia, noting how she guided the entire team without the slightest hitch. Then Hen inquired if they had encountered anything particularly strange. Sison responded that the surrounding non-player characters were incredibly agitated, spreading an unbelievable local hearsay. Apparently, some monstrous creature possessing truly ridiculous strength occasionally decides to pop in and patrol the immediate vicinity. They reported that one highly celebrated local anti-game warden had already been violently dispatched by this brute. Worse yet, a full team of level 50 adventurers got utterly decimated while tackling the associated hunter mission. Han furrowed his brow, realizing this information hadn't appeared anywhere on Olympus Mania's gossip feeds or any of the major discussion boards. Sison looked at his master with puppy dog eyes, clearly anticipating a heroic acceptance, and asked if he perhaps felt up to slaying the menace. After 72 hours, Han and his companions reached Kargana slopes and crashed into a savage, feral beast. Sison flaunts those spooky necromancer tricks during the brawl and hits level 23. So, sitting at 33, glares at her sibling and confesses these boosts are totally bananas, explaining why sane folks dodge this hill. Living here is basically impossible. Han nods, admitting he underestimated the carnage, and Fist bumps them for not dying immediately. While Sezong resurrects that fallen carcass, Han watches suspiciously, questioning if such constant magic usage exhausts her reserves. She shrugs that worry away, claiming her magic is overflowing, and showcases a personal horde of skeletal groupies. Quantity equals quality for her rotting squad. Han observes the crowd, exceeding 200 units, then murmuring about how terrifying she appears. Sesong abruptly declares their arrival. A gargantuan stone wall looms before the group, halting their forward progress. Han stares and asks if his friend possesses any actual navigation skills. Sesong, acting totally cool, insists they are parked right at the correct coordinates. The mechanical assistant wonders if scaling this vertical nightmare is mandatory. Han suggests using wings. However, that robotic companion mentions gravity. Defying spells are currently prohibited. As that trio gazes toward the heavens, Sesong gestures at the mountain's peak. Initially, Han spots Squat, and, upon closer inspection, that fella spots an enormous mutated eagle. Legendary carrier reigns as supreme boss over these heights. This feather jerk grew buff and clever by snacking on glowing power pebbles. Eventually, during their trek, Carrier figured out that people hold sparkly loot and developed a serious thieving addiction. Han orders everyone else to maintain their distance. Carrier emits a vocalization, which, strangely, resembles some pathetic barnyard clucking. That noise reminds Han about a unique tool he acquired lately. While his hand grabs the loot, that beast plunges down, grabbing him from the soil. Those two ladies shriek that fellow's moniker in total panic, dangling from the predator's sharp talons. Han notices a very condescending, teasing glint in the bird's eyes. Such mockery fuels Han's rage. Since he won't permit a glorified chicken to humiliate him, he triggers his skull, crushing punch ability. The interface pings. Half the bird's health is gone. The bird releases him. However, the guy holds those claws tightly, refusing to drop while the beast screams. Surfing on its spine, he announces he will not kill it, provided the giant chicken accepts a role as his minion. Next, the guy winds up using the heavy metallic fist, this specific tool which amplifies every single painful wallop, and delivers a smack, causing the computer to show massive hurt now. Watching from the dirt, his team observes the sky brawl. The interface flashes, suggesting he used that magical jewelry for charm. He slides the band on, triggering its only chance to recruit. Meant for professionals, his massive brain stats provide a very lucky success boost. The monster eventually yields, so the guy must only provide a nickname. While browsing his digital list of companions, the hero mentions that brainwashing monsters feels like a simple task. The girl looks skeptical, asking about his professional training, but he just denies. He uses equipment instead, while the other guy laughs that using toys is cheating. The display reveals the bird's high rank and its expensive diet, essentially turning the thing into a flying bank account drainer. Considering the expense, although high-rank hybrids are worth a fortune, he reveals a wallet, making the bird look like a hungry, greedy debt collector. The man understands the eagle is brilliant, merely acting stupid for many years. He promises the creature shiny treasures if it obeys his orders. Success is finally verified, so he laughs and labels the creature Pokuo. One companion is quite amazed, but the other wonders why this method is useful. Instantly, the entire squad is soaring atop the beast's spine. Both friends stare in total shock regarding the rapid velocity and altitude. He consults the map, claiming they likely missed the front door a while ago. His companion assumes that crashing into the rock face might reveal something. He admits to lacking digging skills, plus soaring is forbidden nearby. The companion mentions that various losers already attempted striking the mountain bottom, merely receiving a failure notice from destiny. Han instructs the whole gang to buckle up. He then tells the bird to ram the mountain, leap off the avian skull and hit the stone. Touching down with style, he punches the vertical rock face. Technology wakes up, sensing his spooky and extremely loud skills. An alert pops up saying the temporal door remains locked. Mission: murder exactly 200 local hairy beasts very quickly. The protagonist wobbles near the drop, feeling the crushing pressure of the deadline. Failing to kill the quota soon means this whole mountain likely collapses. Underneath their feet, a thin glass box keeps the jerk trapped. That super dead guy, so he looks over at Sesong, then scans the massive stinky army of rotting zombies. Checking the math, he asks for a head count, but she responds flatly, 286 precisely, she says, but he insists on sacrifice. She interrupts him quickly, claiming those walking corpses are basically her beloved children. Looking at her blankly, he wonders why she likes smelly skeletons so much. Really, communicating with corpses is weird, but she whispers they dislike being used as fuel. This unusual stalling confuses him, since she is usually as cold as a steak. Her voice wobbles slightly, reminding him of what her old teacher mentioned. They are both traveling down the same dark path, a fact he mentions. She is meant to rule the world without taking orders, and this is just the beginning. Stalling now ruins their progress, a point she finally seems to comprehend. Butchering her minions feels gross, yet finding new monsters to kill is simply not an option right now. Her stomach churns with a weird feeling of saying no to the plan. C shouts at her sibling, breaking the awkward silence quite loudly. He speculates that her weird job title has messed with her brain. Perhaps she became a sensitive soul, which is strange for a girl normally tough. C insists there are no alternatives, so Han demands a final decision now. She can either dump the zombies to stay, or go her own way. C-Zone waits silently throughout an eternity, then eventually offers some tiny, affirmative head tilts. The lady promises to remain by his side, identifying herself as the famous marionette. That legendary soul snatcher then starts humming dark melodies to activate the magical sequence. This dark rite commences, causing 200 ghost minions to evaporate into the void. The girl balances herself upon Coco's oversized and completely motionless physical form. Her limbs quiver as the ceremony persists, while the air turned into stinky mana. Breathing feels impossible as every raised skeleton turns into heaps of charcoal. Beleared Florsa. Every tragic loss shreds segments of the girl's soul, just as digital statistics appear. Most amateurs only burn 200 minions, but her tally is significantly more impressive. Han watches the struggle from afar, wondering if Coast falling always hurts. Then, acting quickly, he decides to intervene. He triggers a minor recovery spell, otherwise, she might drop like a wet sack. The girl dismisses his aid, muttering that she must tolerate this agonizing process. An internal shift occurs right before her legs fail, yet she remains awake. Her physical form stumbles, trapped between newly found power and the fragments she lost. Both Han and Seiya rush forward in a total state of alarm, being completely clueless. Those past 20 years, their rigorous drills, and that brawl with the celestial demon, all those tragic defeats, and quiet gusts of air led precisely to this moment. That mountain home was a giant scam, yet escaping never crossed the girl's mind. Han's brain wears, thinking he can definitely win this game despite the scary difficulty. However, the future remains a mystery, so he speaks with his companion Seiya. He asks if Seiya will assist him, and she gives an affirmative nod. She claims to be fully committed, having recorded every single event until now. That man then verifies things with C-Zone, who offers her tired agreement. At last, the man glances at Coco, who burps a sound of agreement. Han provides the creature an expensive treat, valued at roughly 8 million gold coins. Coco's eyes sparkle while swallowing the loot, just as the software pings again. The game declares the man qualified to receive Kelt's fancy inheritance. This portal for the challenge manifests, while the computer inquires if he will enter. The protagonist ponders the upcoming weirdness and chooses to participate in the adventure. That specific decision is confirmed, as Kelt's old arrangements are now officially finalized. Somewhere peaceful and devoid of cliffside drama, a corporate drone yells at his cell like it owes him money. He blabbers at top speed, desperately attempting damage control, though the person listening clearly thinks he is full of garbage. The caller cautions him against being a hog, since another stupid blunder means they definitely will not save his sorry hide. Han, the grumpy supervisor, looms nearby with limbs tied, forcing the guy to swear that this circus one ever happened twice. Hanging up, he collapses into his seat and grumbles about being absolutely wrecked, then starts overthinking his terrible life choices. Memories of Lupindle and that pale, scrawny brat haunt him, as nobody suspected the little squirt was actually packing the legendary Rantayan. However, the mess now feels like a golden chance, and anyone trying to prank him will soon realize they poked the wrong bear. His digital hit list is officially active, and roughly 700 thirsty adventurers have already signed up to do his dirty work. The gadget vibrates, aching beyond. Fun's scowl at the persistent ringing. Answering with a sigh, he demands an update, while the individual mentions seeing that specific legendary bounty posted on the tavern wall. Han admits to being the mastermind, while the person on the line offhandedly reveals that they recently transformed into a celestial entity. The boss goes to questioning their sanity, but they swear it was pure luck and offer to help him destroy his enemies. Right when the annoying computer voice dings, Han gets aggressively teleported into a weird world that wobbles like it had way too much caffeine. He quickly realizes his friends have vanished, causing a tiny spark of panic to wiggle around in his cold heart. He ignores his anxiety when a freakish triple-limbed avian drops from the heavens like a massive, irritated feather duster. The creature's energy feels disgusting, so Han strikes immediately. With one hit, the monster folds like a Saudi cardboard box, The machine yells that the kill is done, awarding 90,000 shiny gold coins. His progression meter shoots up to the maximum capacity. Han stands there feeling weirdly suspicious, since that bird died too quickly, reminding him of a particularly painful time in his past. He recalls sweating in arena with his grubby teacher, where every clumsy blade wiggle felt like an invitation to the afterlife. That old man's shouting still echoes in his skull, telling him to stop whining, survive the beating, and eventually run the world. Thinking about it now, those sessions were not just about staying alive, they were intended to turn him into a total jerk, a flawless masterpiece of pure villainy. Though another loud beep from the game interrupts his dramatic monologue. This area does not require any fancy progression points, meaning his stroll toward victory just became a lot less bumpy. He reaches rank 50 in a totally separate region. Saya is currently shredding bad guys like a hungry woodchipper, looking remarkably natural while doing so. Static electricity zaps the entire arena, as each bolt deletes a fresh group of ugly beasts from existence. Alerts spam her screen regarding deceased flying rodents, while her internal energy suddenly decides to upgrade into a significantly more vicious form. Meanwhile, in the damp basements of Kelt, Tinkin warriors decide to crash the party. Sesung flips her mojo to engine mode, slicing through metal suits like a sushi chef on caffeine. Game notifications pop up as she stacks bodies, making the Reaper himself feel a bit socially awkward. Spooky and colored juice splashes around her boots, telling the deceased that their nap time is over. Bone, dry soldiers in dented gear crawl out, bumming a catchy tune, while doing some aggressive kneeling. They pledge their eternal bony service to the lady they call Marion Lim. Suddenly they evolve, graduating from basic zombies to fancy, by ranking corpse cavalry. Sesung stares at that heavy title, realizing it carries more historical baggage than a dusty museum basement. Across the way, Toko turns giant spicy dirt noodles into a very unappealing pile of mush. He spots a glowing blue rock in the mess, and just eats it. 0 brain cells use. The computer voice chirps, letting him know his internal plumbing has been successfully rearranged. The scenery does a weird glitchy dance, sapping the whole gang back into a group hug. Unchecks the squad, finding Seiya and Sesung unhurt, and bragging about their huge level gains. Han assumes his numbers went up as well, while the floor begins a nervous jitter. The ground lets out a gassy groan as the game screen makes a grand announcement. The front door to Sult's is wide open, so Han tells everyone to look busy. Before they can argue over lunch, a familiar voice ruins the silence like a bad ringtone. A ghostly light show mimics his late teacher, looking way too intense for a bunch of pixels. The image claps for Han, claiming all his gains came from that time he was tortured daily. He even gets a gold star for helping the Sky Devil build a massive military, suggesting that Han's final destination is basically owning every square inch of the local map. The game ding-dongs again, giving a fresh coat of paint to his evil chore list. Han finally gets it, realizing his nickname sounds quite villainous. That top-tier mission and all the mean things his coach taught him are connected. This whole mess is a scheme to trash the Empire and live in the Sky Devil's shadow. The ghost finishes with some confusing babble about a really nice person who will see Han, and immediately hand over the keys to the local graveyard. Han stands there confused for a second before the light show explodes and disappears. A new alert pops up, announcing they finished the Celt History project. Having a pro ghost color around finally ticked the last box on the list. Having survived the chaotic mess, Sesung jokingly mentions the challenge ended way too quickly, which Han begrudgingly admits is true. Seiya is wearing a massive smug expression, happy their teamwork catapulted Sesung to heights she would have failed to reach by herself. Han remains quiet while acknowledging the cold reality. Supposing the boy attempted this raid solo, he would currently be a permanent fixture inside. Suddenly the loot screen materializes, and the digital gods grant 2 precious advancement tokens to their inventory. 20 juicy attribute points arrive alongside a solitary, glistening crimson gemstone. Han stares intently at that ruby prize, fully aware its valuation among greedy merchants would be absolutely astronomical. Given such a massive financial windfall, his days of worrying about empty pockets have officially retired to the history books. Kea also receives a gem, reacting with immediate and deafening enthusiasm, while Han wisely chooses to keep his opinions hidden. He lets her celebrate, then Sesung inspects the shiny rock, verifies it is genuine, and reveals her personal prize haul. An upgrade point appears next to a ridiculous skill named Eternal Energy, which cuts the price of raising corpses by 50%. After more levels, the cost becomes literally nothing with no limits, leading Shia to suggest they go feast on something delicious. Han realizes the scary reality. A woman commanding an infinite legion of zombie for free is a total nightmare scenario. Mid-conversation, Daipek begins emitting a strange, blinding radiance that catches everyone. The notification chimes to confirm his rank is Surge. Evolution has finished, and his fresh moniker is now Korea. His experience bar explodes up to level 73, while his professional rating leaps from 5 all the way to 55. Han blinks in disbelief, slightly shocked yet genuinely awestruck, guessing this serves as the reward for surviving that portal. Han redirects his attention to his own interface, opening his character sheet and noticing only the ruin attribute can be altered. He dumps his points there. The interface vibrates with power, and his ruinous talent finally attains its ultimate manifestation. A secondary annihilation perk unlocks, and the sheer power level leaves him breathless. Realizing this is a massive game changer, somewhere nearby, a different drama develops as a squad of professional killers follows the path they left behind. Those trackers inspect every single pebble, yet once they reach a specific clearing, the footprints simply vanish into thin air. That steep mountain drop reveals 0 clues, no tracks, and no sign of recent movement. Kang Muso, known as the Bloody Brawler, walks to the front to lead, convinced their targets are hiding nearby. As they prepare to move, the solid cliff face suddenly explodes, sending stone shards everywhere. A giant, terrifying avian creature bursts out of the rubble, with 3 people sitting comfortably on its feathery spine. A notification bell rings out. His celestial cardiac skills transform into their ultimate state, and electricity jolts through Han. Velocity increases by 30%. Ability resets are cut by half, and both his vitality and spirit reserve skyrocket. His total villainy score rises to 3, charm reaches 10. And every binary attribute gains a massive 10-point boost. Seiya leans in to spy on his numbers with a doubtful smirk. Season asks if he is already unfairly overpowered, and Han simply shrugs. Season wonders if 90 is the world record, but Seiya reveals the shocking news that she has already surpassed 100 elsewhere. That impact rattled Han since she was no common noob. Then the game engine announced the Celt heritage was toast. One last pop-up finished the trade, giving Wicked Souls access to the real Heavenbreaker soul skills. Here was the punchline. 32 ticks to vanish where the murder sensors kick in. What a lovely surprise. Nobody hesitated for a single millisecond. They descended that jagged rock wall like professional mountain goats on a mission. As soon as their boots touched dirt, Seiya exhaled a sigh of relief. Mission complete, though peace is usually fleeting. Seiya squinted at the incline while gesturing forward, where some dudes dressed in metal cans were hanging out. These weren't just casual observers but professional headhunters, and that Rantadian paycheck was still sizzling. Plus these idiots seemed totally certain that Han was their jackpot. They were incredibly persistent, truly annoying and very present, but before the dance started, a dark blur plummeted down, revealing Kang Mujo. He landed right next to Bappa, causing a miniature dust storm, and Seiya stuttered something about running away. However, Kang glared at our hero, announcing with total certainty that their little game of tag was over. He addressed Han by the Rantadian name like it was gospel truth, causing Han to lower his register, ordering Luna and Marion to go hide. While Kang oozed arrogance with every inch he drifted toward them, the guy was actually hovering, clearly a perk from his celestial sugar daddy. Then an alert popped out, the ambush trigger, and those mercenaries kept their mouths shut. Aware of the gravity of the situation, Kang didn't bother using a fake ID or an alias. The guy bellowed his status as a Crimson firefighter and Shinsum executive, while heat hugged him like a spicy tuxedo. This ceased to be a simple kidnapping and turned into a massive marketing campaign to show off Shinsum's muscles. Without warning, Bob suddenly decided to throw hands. Sharp nails scratched right through Kang, pushing the entity backward. The beast slid but maintained his position near the drop, totally unfazed, while the trackers stood like statues. Did that literal fluff ball just shove a god-tier warrior like a bully? Kang whispered some angry nonsense, because he was obviously shaken, but Han was ready with a comeback. He teased Kang, claiming his entire personality and strength were just bought with cash and expensive pajamas. His temper exploded, making the idea of taking prisoners disappear. The guy swore to torch the entire local vicinity. His high-end gear reacted to his anger, coating him in a layer of very angry heat. Seiya volunteered to join the brawl, however Han rejected that idea immediately. Should that seventh celestial entity show her face, their entire secret identity would be totally ruined. Remaining unseen was absolutely mandatory. The challenger pounced, but the hero stayed entirely still, slicing past heat. He delivered a strike that rattled the atmosphere. The console notified him of a 50% injury discount. Regardless, that strike connected with the weight of a massive locomotive. The opponent's outfit surged, mending fractures with shiny trinkets and magical bandages. A mercenary mumbled about that specific pay to win inventory. The protagonist stayed bored, gliding closer while judging the opponent's expensive wardrobe over actual talent. Irritated, the antagonist vomited a spicy inferno, That ability shredded the arena like an unhinged bonfire. The player said he crashed, yet he remained stubborn. A rapid gesture was made toward the pet, who was no longer Bakba. Using his legitimate title, the master ordered the bird to protect everyone. Coco nodded, looking surprisingly sharp and alert. Overhead, the firmament blushed crimson from the spicy smoke. The small fight had officially escalated. It morphed into a total circus. Elsewhere, inside a fancy, air-conditioned tower, Hugh Chanson entered the boss lair following an urgent ping. The angry manager complained that exiting the simulation made everyone ignore him entirely. A complete news vacuum was demanded, banning all spoilers and clips. Even so, he figured several illicit recordings were already spreading. Peering outside, the manager complained of a ruined era where failures triumphed and power stayed concealed. He predicted a massive crash, a purge that would delete the noobs. The current youth, he muttered, will eventually lose their silly little hopes. Returning to the simulation, the hero hitched a ride on his beast. A tiny hint of thankfulness appeared on the player. The usual duo was missing, leaving the creature to prepare for leadership duties. Visions returned of the previous scrap, featuring singed feathers and endless hits. Yet he persisted, especially as loud instructions sliced through the noise. Coco finally reached a firm decision regarding his future path. No longer would he merely brawl, he intended to obey commands. That exhausted squad eventually reached the primary skydiver headquarters at last. Little rascals began applying bandages to Coco. Meanwhile Han relaxed within that executive seat, acting like the building belonged to him. Sirkin marched inside, propping this massive mountain involving paperwork onto the wooden table. Han stared at those documents, twitching his nose, and inquired if this represented their scheme for staying alive during the snowy season. Sirkin signaled affirmative because local blizzards would eat an unprepared person for breakfast without a second thought. High-quality coats and heaters were required for the 800 souls currently residing in the Skyver facility. The final bill reached 8 million shiny coins, which caused Han to twitch his bushy eyebrows in total shock. These folks were planning their survival long before his arrival. Despite him being just a digital background character in their reality, they might soon design rebellion strategies like seasoned accountants, and Sirkin noted they possessed 4 billion credits stolen from those Murder Veil chumps. That man permitted her to spend whatever was required, though thoughts of losing cash made his internal organs cramp up painfully. After the lady requested over 1 billion gold, Han gestured approval, whereupon she teased about broadcasting his extreme charity to every single person. That generous move made the Sky Devil subordinates feel even more devoted to their leader. Han felt fine, because reaching level 15 meant the gates to the lucrative monster zones were finally swinging wide open. Large sums of cash were destined to arrive. Meanwhile, in a far-off location, a Dinger fellow called Yerhan sat patiently within the walls of a granite fortress. Doctor, that number 3 elderly member, arrived just moments later. Yerhan rarely organized social gatherings for fun, so Ledger wondered if this discussion involved that mysterious legendary powerhouse figure. Yerhan nodded and claimed he felt spooky vibes from the dude, enough raw power to qualify as the next grand leader. The third geezer concurred immediately as he refused to take orders from any pathetic weakling. That senior prompted Yerhan regarding several decades dedicated towards assembling the Black Floral Squad, much like how he nurtured Murder Veil. But currently, this Black Floral chieftain is nowhere near Yerhan, a discrepancy which seriously irritates his soul. Yerhan questioned whether the third elder truly believed he could punch the current master into retirement. Ledger interrupted quickly because he felt he already grasped the maximum potential of their superior. The rest of the old men felt the same way, getting cranky and refusing to wait around for eternity. Yerhan mentioned the boss had changed significantly since the old days. The man returned using improved skills, sufficient for standing alongside the big shots without falling over. Even Nakti was a threat, plus he remained the unique connection for getting fancy stuff from the world beyond. Lecture confessed the leader guaranteed warm clothes, but Murder Veil remains in control of the primary metropolis. Yerhan explains that those riches weren't slighted, they were donated willingly, and the boss burns cash strictly for hellish fin tasks, seeing Yerhan as a mere pawn in his grand scheme. Yerhan advises Lexer to chill out, since massive defense checks are arriving shortly, then the objective falls. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Han and Seo view the divine news, where Nova is cooking up freaky beasts using magic stones. If this works, loot caves become trash, but there is a tiny 30% winning chance. Sia finds it nuts, crafting demons like a mad scientist, though it burns a mountain of gold, and shrugs while she mocks his calm vibe, given he just deleted the entire first land. Does the fact that Nova is grabbing all the attention annoy him? He just strokes her hair, lacking any desire to market the absolute sinister name. His future foes likely summon beasts anyway, so why be jealous? just don't act thirsty for attention. If she craves company, she should flirt with other stars, because sticking to him ruins their stealth. Seeking a personal journey might be smart, but she rejects that since his power-ups are god tier, so Han just mulls over Nova's weird biology project. Even with crappy odds, if those demons get one lucky roll, they stop eating dumpster leftovers. Eventually, she asks where the road leads, and he says the celestial streaming stream without a blink. Massive animals roam around, big-eared mammoths, hippos shooting rockets, and lizards with dual noggins. Nova essentially put the whole place on lockdown to keep their magic rock supply safe. This explains why Zeta is tagged along, the number 6 big shot of the group, well known for his massive neighborhood-level explosions. Once the divine bind and spook skills open, Han stopped playing hide and seek with his real self. The squad hits the teleport pad near the water, where the regular gang is already chilling. Zeta stays nearby, hidden under a magic invisibility cloak. Han divides everyone into duos, reminding Seiya she is way more than a basic gamer. She's a space goddess. So he and Rufendel enter, with Sisong trailing behind them. Seiya will move only when he gives the signal. A lookout from Nova sees the crew and assumes they are Mac's messy squad. But the facts emerge. Spooky spells, no equipment, and a massive bird flying laps. Truth strikes. He is the Ramtatian. The lookout panics and pings headquarters, waiting for a reply. Just let the legend through. The order shocks him while Han strolls forward. Nova guys move away, telling him to stay inside the lines as he enters the gate. Han gives a skeptical look, while Rufendel grumbles that everyone likely fears his legendary muscle power. Han nods, assuming that clip of King getting wrecked went viral, so Syed and Sisong get free cookies today. Logic holds, since every no employee saw that embarrassing video, and Han finds their constant staring quite annoying. A random Nova minion whispers for instructions, receiving a blunt command to act natural and fix things silently. Silence blankets the zone, making Han suspect a low enemy count, so he tells Rufendel to glue himself nearby. Rufendel agrees, oblivious to King and his crew hiding in the dark like creepy stalkers. King chooses a dramatic moment to pounce, but Han predicted this predictable assault. Han casually tells Rufendel to raise a defensive shield, wearing a smug grin regarding his foresight. He adds that Rufendel might gain some bonus stats, just as the chaotic surprise attack arrives. Han remains cool, springing into motion as if he had scheduled this brawl in his daily planner. He yells for Rufendel to conjure protection, promising to stack some magical glitter for maximum durability. King screams at his team to link their abilities and throw some dizzy stars at the target. Rufendel deploys a glowing wall, though he grumbles about the explosion being bigger than his paycheck. Han offers a reassuring gesture, indicating he will assist in carrying this heavy magical burden. Sisong advances, while navigating the dense, swirling vapor. She hacks through the smog, desperately wondering who forgot to turn off the smoke machine. Han shouts for her to retreat, warning that the area ahead is basically a spicy murder zone. She stops dead, pauses briefly, then signals for everyone to stop throwing punches for a second. This battle looks rather sad compared to her dreams, especially that supposedly lethal move they just tried. That star-killing move barely managed to chip the paint here. Observing from the edge, Nova gets incredibly salty. Nova attempts to motivate his underlings, threatening that resisting him results in a very expensive hospital bill. He never finishes, because Kako appears out of thin air. Kako decks the talkative fellow, permanently ending his obnoxious rant. Nearby, Saya huddles in a low squat, anticipating the perfect moment to start the party. Saya asks if it is go time, but Han tells her to keep her pants on. Precision is key and right now is suboptimal, especially as the debris finally begins to settle. Han pivots to ensure Sisong has not been flat. Sisong confirms her health is perfect, crediting Han for her lack of bruises. Gritting her teeth, Sisong refuses to play hide and seek, choosing instead to punch things together. The crew slips down from Koko's spine while Nova's peepers lock onto their landing. He feels totally spooked because they survived the prior explosion without any bruises. Their perfect health makes his skin crawl, yet his goons keep guessing weird reasons. Perhaps those folks are just giant metal walls that forgot to pack their tea. Some idiot steps out, wanting to crush the tank, and Nova gives him the thumbs up. Han checks the camera with his buddy to ensure the slapstick comedy is recorded. Facing 70 losers, Han tells his pal to steal all their goodies during the fight. Hatchet the method waddles out, claiming they are totally doomed, and poorly dressed, and should just beg for mercy, while saying sorry to the director. Han ignores the whining, calling out the massive load of trash behind their rules, mocking their failed attempt at being landlords when they never even drew lines. But they act like kings, even though their boss started a fight he cannot finish. Han is so chill that Hatchet's big mouth stops. Bravery melts away as the boss man gets heated. No more talking. Han snaps his fingers for his skeleton pals to break the pavement. The lady adds a sprinkle of magic to buff the ghouls as they stand up. Han starts the riot, demanding the head honcho show his face for a beating. Hatchet is still trying to figure out how to win using magic juices and potions, but he misses the incoming punch. Han's fist meets his chest with a boom. Just bare knuckles, no steel, and the meath head flops like a fish. Staring blankly, he wonders why his legs decided to retire now. Han looks at the failure, joking that this professional shield guy is basically a wet napkin. He supposedly fights huge monsters, but one human poke turned his bones into jelly. Immediately, Han tells his dead janitors to sweep away the remaining trash. The scouts are frozen, seeing their tallest mountain of meat get wrecked by one finger. Run for your lives, they whisper, as the spooky army keeps dancing and growing. The boss man chuckles at retreating, thinking the wizard used all his mana fuel on that flashy show and is now completely empty. However, the lady's plan is a massive wave of bodies that never stops. The lookouts scream at their friends to stop being scared and keep on running. Han refuses to stop the carnage, commanding his dark knights to slaughter everyone while telling the lady to stay safe and watch. A small head gesture follows as his energy warps, suggesting that a giant mess is about to happen. The computer blares, stating he just used a spooky phantom skill that breaks the sky. His fighting numbers skyrocket, with damage and reach gaining a 30% increase immediately. Magic prices crash while recharge delays are halved for his totally mediocre ability. Lightstroke morphs into genuine lightstroke. Not a single breath is lost. The B-5 tanks try to block, but they possess the lifespan of flies. Squads perish prior to his directive finishing, while the equipment continues emitting loud beeps. Elite Gamer deceased. 5 tokens of pure weakness collected. A message explains that these dark credits can delete broken or unfair aspects of his body. The guy is slightly baffled but remembers it. While over at headquarters, things get messy. Management freaks out while recording of this massacre goes viral on social media. That secret raiding area got cracked open, so everyone enjoys seeing the firm getting destroyed globally. Employees hurry to erase those clips while concealing proof, yet this mess remains unfixable. In the dirt, Season lets the zombies attack the people who used to be their friends. The head manager watches in fear as corpses stand up to punch their former coworkers. Every bit of courage disappears because Season, speaking like chilling frost, demands that he simply quits. Loud wailing fills the air as the army fails, while Han slices the remaining losers. Constant and brutal, the bell rings because he stole some red gems from the fire squad. Finally, some decent loot is actually appearing, which makes him feel quite intrigued. Han trades one bad boy point to fix a single broken part of himself. His fortune level, which was previously in the toilet, turns positive in a heartbeat. Muscles have officially reached peak capacity, making him smirk about that massive upgrade. Rufeindel shouts for the group to grab everything for Han, who wonders if Evil buys more sats. Pondering ends since Rufeindel gestures frantically, because those legendary opponents finally showed up to fight. 3 weird monster faces, the primary blades of the firm, walk into the light. A member glares toward Han, spots that mythical sword, then issues his ultimate threat. Just quit, let us interrogate you, and perhaps we will not erase you from existence. Han asks for current info about those approaching goons, then Rufeindel provides some harsh facts. Rufeindel clarifies that the fellow on the left is Curdle, a melee fighter with massive anger issues. That warrior was scented from an obscure category. Our protagonist inspects the Curdle guy, quipping that he possesses the intimidation factor of a soggy biscuit. Over on the starboard side lurks the Shade, another rare, spec duelist, following the path of the blade. Standing right in the spotlight is Rufin, a chunky lead specializing in blocking stuff. Our hero recalls Rufendel's weird fixation regarding protective barriers, pondering whether this Rufin fellow represents a hidden man. Crush, Rufin delivers a spicy demand, telling him to yield quietly and permit a full-body cavity search, and maybe escape being erased. Though our main man detects a massive pile of farm fertilizer, this entire strategy reeks of a murder squad, so the protagonist decides to remain completely mute. The tank warns that if the guy fails to speak pronto, the violence shall commence. He notices the absence of a field medic or holy man, a choice that is either brave or sheer hubris. The Curdle guy lunges forward, behaving with massive ego, assuming that being unarmored makes his opponent a total weakling. The protagonist halts the blow using nothing besides his bare palms, looking quite bored. Those shocked expressions on every face are purely comedic gold. Even that loudmouth Curdle finally realizes the guy is way more jacked and speedy than his tiny brain imagined. Yet the sudden epiphany arrives alongside a knuckle sandwich which launches the poor sap into orbit. The B-5 tank understands immediately that the intelligence files on our protagonist were basically just bad jokes. The victim survives, which he acknowledges as evidence that these goons might actually have some tiny spark of competence. Our hero instructs Rufindel to keep filming the disaster. The tank Rufin, reorganizing, tries a bribe, promising monster, killing permits, deleting the hit list, and offering a cushy gig inside the Nova Guild. A massive salary every 12 months, plus unlimited entry to the guild's vessels and monster habitats. A formal invitation, plus protection from those giant extraterrestrial overlords. Our protagonist does not pause for a second before rejecting that garbage proposal, absolutely roasting the guild's dominance over the market. He clarifies that he did not arrive to become another boring cog in their silly corporate regime. He arrived to torch the entire establishment, then flings that same inquiry toward the group. Would you clowns offer this sweet deal if I was just a random level 1 pleb, buzzing the internet trolls to spam messages? A few jokers ridicule the guild's frantic state, whereas many speculate about our hero's sexual plan. Our hero waves off the entire circus as a sad effort at bartering, because the conversation is officially toast. The enemy squad decides that talking is for nerds, and they dogpile him. Han's response was simply a pristine, high-velocity slice of light, a single, perfect strike that cleanly separated Curdle into two neat halves. The assassin, realizing a head-on confrontation would leave him completely flat, instantly changed tactics, deciding Season would make a more suitable target. He figured her necromancer focus on the undead meant she was useless in close combat. He slipped into the shadows, moving to execute what should have been an easy kill. But just as he moved in for the finishing blow, Irhan seemingly materialized out of nowhere, slicing the assassin to ribbons before he could even register the threat, leaving him in a state of pure disbelief, taken out by someone whose presence he hadn't detected. A truly embarrassing way to go. Nova's whole team froze, realizing their top-tier monster had just become a pile of meat. Whispers spread, identifying him as part of the dreaded Black Flora group, turning confusion into genuine dread. The unease escalated into full-blown panic when someone mentioned the children of Murdervel were involved. The mere possibility of Murdervel's legendary leader being present sent their nerves completely collapsing. Rufin, watching his elite forces crumble into hysterics, stared in utter shock. Murder whale. There. He was certain that particular monster had never shown his face in public until this moment. He wondered what on earth connected this powerful figure to Han, the chaotic entity before him. Before Rufin could figure it out, the arrival of Zeta descended upon them. Zeta landed with a dramatic flourish and a deadly declaration, stating, "Every single one of the Master's enemies will immediately perish." He charged headlong into the fight without bothering to wait for Han's specific orders. Irhan apologized for jumping the gun, but Han simply waved away the concern. They had eliminated the assassin, which was really the most important thing. Rufin, entering full desperation mode, begged for another round of peaceful discussion. He admitted the initial 100 million offer was a pathetic lowball, promising the best possible treatment if Han joined Nova. Han laughed at the suggestion, and attacked, making it clear he didn't want Nova scrapped. Rufin was immediately struck 4 times in rapid succession, his disbelief perfectly captured on his face as he crumbled to the ground in defeat. Han proceeded to loot a pouch from the body, finding a staggering 200 gold. He was genuinely surprised by how loaded Nova's people were, quickly gathering everything else before outsiders arrived. Season asked if Irhan and Zeta were new additions to Han's group, and Han confirmed they were Sky Devil elders. Rufindel proudly declared he had already hoovered up every last valuable item in the area, offering the entire collection to Han with a flourish. He firmly insisted Han shouldn't have to perform such menial tasks as bending over to pick up anything for himself. Irhan and Zeta stared at Rufindel with complete admiration, treating him as if he were a legendary figure for such unwavering loyalty. Han, meanwhile, quietly wondered exactly how much loot Rufindel had actually managed to snag in a single haul. Then, completely out of the blue, an extremely urgent voice sliced through the air. The voice bar, "Boko, this is critical. Everyone hit the ground right now." Rufindel and Season received specific instructions to launch themselves into the air. Irhan and Zeta prepared for combat, while Season asked the very reasonable question of what in the world was happening. Han could only reply that he didn't exactly know, but something truly enormous was approaching rapidly. A monstrous shadow rolled over the group, triggering a chilling system alert that lit up their displays. A new challenge had officially begun, the Bossmaster Raid Quest. The system confirmed the event, declaring in ominous capital letters that absolute evil descends. It had apparently been triggered when this massive power source merged with the strange conditions of the monster field. Immediately afterward, several immense boss monsters emerged from beneath the surface. One creature was a chimera with ridiculously long rabbit ears, another resembled a bizarre wire gun, and a third was a massive two Pitted beast snarling aggressively. The new raid notification popped up again, officially labeling the event as Boss Monster Raid. Han fixed his attention on their ridiculous proportions. He was simultaneously impressed and slightly annoyed at the sheer scale of the gigantic enemies. Said, having analyzed the monsters, delivered a blunt assessment. This particular fight might be far too overwhelming. He suggested it was too much for them, and hey, especially considering Han's current limitations, recommending they retreat for now. Han, worried about Han getting destroyed, sided with dead but Han abruptly and emphatically dismissed them both. He stated he wasn't backing down, asking if they doubted him, taking their subsequent silence as a clear answer. Then watch me, he commanded, preparing for action. Just as the system chimed again with another notification, the system confirmed the bosses were spawned specifically as a counter reaction to the absolute evil's presence, something Han immediately understood. These were not random monsters. They were designed under specific conditions that only he possessed the ability to completely bypass. His heaven shattering phantoms surged violently forward as his unique energy perfectly intertwined with the absolute evil's power source. When he advanced another step, the colossal bosses didn't even flinch, remaining utterly still. They were completely locked down, frozen solid by the sheer suffocating aura of power radiating from his direction. And, full of self-assurance, simply marched straight toward the helpless creatures. Seta and Han could only stand there in silent observation, their expressions glowing with complete astonishment. A system notification chimed in, revealing that some elusive piece fragment had just been successfully compiled. Due to the strange circumstances involving these creatures, the absolute evil now feels completely in tune with them. He possesses absolute power, causing the bosses to shake in their boots. Clearly aware that the Grim Reaper was on speed dial, Zeta, who used to respect Han simply for crushing the Nova alien, is absolutely flabbergasted by the insane level of strength he's developed so quickly. Han, visibly rattled, whispers that Han is definitely not the person they once knew. Another system alert flashes across the screen, confirming Han has satisfied all hidden prerequisites and acquired a new, secret cosmetic outfit. Seconds later, the massive boss monsters simply blinked out of existence, vanquished without a single hit being landed. Over at the Nova alien headquarters, in their sleek glass skyscrapers, a very tense conference was in full swing, sparked by a recently detected power spike. Jung-hoon informs everyone that the extremely disruptive player managed to successfully cross the strange, hovering sky river. When pressed for specifics, Jung-hoon confirmed the individual's level, revealing it was only level 50. A wave of genuine panic spread through the high-ranking leadership. Nova's control has suffered a major setback, and even their top-tier talent, the famous Three Swords, couldn't prevent it. They completely failed to hold back this single individual, standing shamefully with bowed heads and muttering apologies under their breath. The leadership didn't assign all the blame to the trio, as the reality of the situation was completely undeniable. This individual's capabilities are completely beyond measurement, yet the executives still ranted about their poor planning. Had they measured his true potential sooner, Nova might have secured a partnership rather than watching the entire situation implode. That missed opportunity really hurts, especially because this chaotic character isn't just powerful. He completely defies the established guidelines, making front-page news while still only being level 50. He has reached a point where nobody can possibly overlook him, with governments, including the United States, taking notice. The Justice Alliance is actively investigating how to turn him into a weapon for their own agenda, while Nova's official position demands his immediate elimination. An anarchic individual like him fundamentally threatens any orderly system, and the threat level only multiplies since he has gathered companions. Reviewing all of the player's past actions, Kang identifies a clear sequence of events, all pointing toward a terrifying potential outcome. He is the absolute evil, Kang declares, stating that every action he takes supports this conclusion, before turning to his grandson, to discuss his future plans. A future where the elite don't have to be sacrificed to maintain system integrity, and the player will be publicly labeled as the absolute evil. Kang will expertly manipulate public sentiment, making sure the story sticks, but a secret option will remain in reserve. They will keep one strategy open. If this monstrous player can somehow be controlled or convinced, Nova would be happy to employ him. Raw strength always has value in the market. Meanwhile, back on the battlefield, Han unleashes another powerful blow, delivering a punch directly into the enormous elephant-like creature. His deadly fist glows with unrestrained energy, as Kang's distant voice still resonates within the corporate boardroom. Before any negotiation, this particular player needs to be strategically isolated. He fancies himself invincible, yet he's merely one vulnerable individual. Nova plans to demonstrate that a single person, no matter their legendary status, cannot possibly outpace the relentless force of a perfectly functional empire. An absolute force of nature, ends the conflict with a decisive, forward, plunging strike. The automated system's detached announcement follows. The two-headed Chimera boss has finally fallen. The colossal beast's massive form disintegrates. That concludes the encounter. All three powerful foes are now relics of the past. The system instantly proclaims the raid successful, and begins dispensing compensation. The course of history is altered. Han pauses, reflecting on this new development. This achievement was certainly a resounding triumph. The subsequent boost in absolute evil energy made the risk entirely worthwhile. A fresh reward notice materializes. 300,000 coins and an immediate character progression. Along with 0.3 points of cure evil. Han's expression darkens slightly. He questioned whether this distribution covered only the boss eliminations. If so, a few monster stones should also have been part of the package. Immediately, the system places 3 black stones into his inventory, almost on demand. Han finds himself thoroughly astonished. Irhan and Zeta simultaneously cry out his name. Han mumbles to himself, wondering aloud if this experience is genuine. The system elaborates, informing them that among all types of monster stones, black stones hold the pinnacle of value. Throughout the 2 centuries, since Olympus was first launched, these items have materialized just 3 times. Their rarity defies all logic. Han lowers his head to observe the items, his mind rapidly filling with recollections, resulting in a broad smile stretching across his face. Irhan whispers that their boss appears significantly cheerful. Zeta suggests this stems from Han fully unleashing his considerable power. Irhan dismisses the idea with a head shake. He believes this emotion is motivated by something entirely different. Just as this happens, a new arrival makes an appearance. The leader of the Justice Alliance appears, delivering a courteous introduction and expressing gratitude for having arrived before it was too late. The director of Blue Heart emerges from behind the Alliance leader, and commands everyone present to cease all movement immediately. Han reflexively retreats as the captain quickly shortens the distance between them, questioning how the stranger managed to move past his defenses unnoticed. The Alliance leader holds steady, directing his full attention toward Han. Simultaneously, Sezon, Han, and Zeta take a sideways step as Irhan ushers the new arrivals further into the space. Irhan questions the overall strategy, and the new group begins their formal introduction. The lady steps forward to introduce herself, while the big chief verifies she belongs to their specific organization. The woman faces him, requesting his focus before explaining their desire to bring him onto their elite squad. We provide a heavy starting check, a massive yearly payout, plus some really fancy custom armor pieces. You get entry to private monster grounds, illegal charts, and total support, so tell us your thoughts. Suddenly, the Justice Captain butts in like a hungry vulture, offering way more cash and some legendary loot. The man stays hush, while they argue that even a powerhouse needs a big shield against those space invaders. She warns that turning them down might lead to his local commerce privileges being cut off by their connections. They definitely run this town, but the hero just listens while internally dismissing their words as hot air. Whatever. Since he possesses secret methods to loot and trade, making their pathetic contracts seem totally useless and redundant. To flex on them, he lets his internal energy explode outward like a localized hurricane. A trio of invisible predators manifest, ready for blood. The creatures are all instantly turned into corpses. Additionally, he swiftly collected the fallen treasures, inspecting the fresh equipment he just earned. Our hero concludes that 500 million won is pathetic pocket change, since his talents generate wealth effortlessly. The girl keeps quiet and nervous, seeing that his actual power makes those old video clips look like cartoons. Those figures look like tiny breadcrumbs to the warrior, who simply declines their request without a second thought. She hesitates before bowing out with grace, allowing the other leader another chance to open his mouth. Fixing the record, he notes a confusion regarding currency, because they actually proposed 500 million greenbacks. The fighter stops cold, realizing he misunderstood the currency, which makes this new deal look absolutely incredible right now. The fighter wonders if the rival group increased their bid, yet the woman admits they still use local cash. Regardless, the disparity is comical, contrasting a lowly manager with peanuts against top leaders carrying bags of gold. The leader stares toward the girl, questioning whether her proposal essentially amounts to a handful of pocket change, for a let-in of his status. This tiny paycheck feels insulting, so hopefully no grudges are held. The group promises to respect his autonomy, though they shall keep the checkbook ready for any future meetings. The guy mentions that should he decide to join a guild, their team holds first place. The woman is shook by the massive gap. knowing that group was rich but not that loaded. This whole event is bizarre, and our protagonist notices her staring blankly, asking about her current mental state. The lady mutters a fast excuse, mentioning she should probably beat it before things get any more awkward. The man offers no resistance, as the woman retreats. One can see the total fury in her expression. Internally, she insults the arrogant child who clearly lacks any sense of his lowly position. That electronic entity nudges Ellen, requesting an immediate report on her current progress. She confirms the guide is precisely the conceited prick described in all those cautionary tales. The person on the line concurs, dismissing him as literal refuse. Right before the call abruptly disconnects, Ellen contemplates the impending corporate strategy, assuming they will attempt to show Han that he is not a one-man army. Currently, she follows a single command to recover that specific bag from before, which is vital, so Ellen agrees, and hangs up. That mysterious contact muses on how Han collects enemies like rare stickers, remaining clueless about his sneaky master plan. Alas, the current state of affairs tilts quite nicely toward their own advantage. Should Ellen successfully acquire that container, the entire dynamic might change in a flash. Returning to the now, Han muses upon the dark mineral currently resting in his possession, pondering how to activate its dormant energy for maximum chaos, ensuring the entire planet notices its grand debut. His cellular device erupts, displaying a sequence of numbers that he has never coded. He accepts the call, recognizing the distinctive vocal tones of Sezong echoing through the receiver. Han experiences sheer bewilderment, particularly as he never disclosed his personal digits to this lady. The girl chuckles lightly, verifying her identity with a somewhat mischievous tone, and inquires about his availability, mentioning she is hanging with Sia, and suggests a quick physical gathering, if only to facilitate a short, pointless conversation between colleagues. Inside the coffee house, Han enters and instantly notices Sezong and Sia huddled together, while Sia immediately blabs about how she managed to orchestrate this awkward social gathering, and handed his private digits to Sezong for bonding, while joking that Sezong is quite a looker. Then she demands his feedback, staring him down when he stays silent, asking why he has suddenly lost his tongue. Han's annoyance spikes, his speech turning jagged, as he explicitly states his disdain for meeting people in the flesh. Quite frankly, he never intended to exit his sanctuary, appearing only to drop a massive reality check. Situations are incredibly fragile lately, so any verbal blunder in public might provide outsiders with restricted information. Everyone must stay cautious, as he warns them that one clumsy action could trigger a mountain of risky guesses. He intensifies his warning, advising them to use their brains regarding handles, both within the simulation and reality, and to regulate their speech and patterns. Then he focuses on Sezong, strictly commanding her to keep her gamer tag private. Furthermore, she must hide her character category from everyone, and he barks the instruction again when she pauses in confusion. She eventually mutters a faint word of agreement, while Sia stands shocked by his incredibly harsh demeanor, inquires why he behaves like the apocalypse is imminent, considering that no actual disasters have occurred yet. The guy retorted that Sia should prepare for a massive domestic disaster once she finally returns home. Afterward, with a fierce stare, he asks which genius suggested she distribute his private digits to everyone. Sia mumbles some nonsense about their partnership, but Han silences her faster than a muted television, dismissing her weak excuses, and reinforcing his strict rule: do not play games, and do not fail him. Having finished his rant, he claims he has actual work and promptly vanishes from the coffee shop. As he departs, Sia whispers in total confusion, wondering who would even bother wasting energy on their lives. She gives Sezong a regretful look, claiming Han usually acts normal, while Sezong quietly ponders his bizarre vibe. From their very first encounter, she sensed a strange aura about him, a silent reliability that feels protective. He constantly intervenes during emergencies, quietly guarding her, and that stoic power makes her want a real meeting, simply to express gratitude. While recalling Sia's joke that Han would be stunned by her gorgeous face, that joke feels quite ridiculous now, since he seems totally blind to her beauty, a thought that lingers. Back in the digital realm, Rufindel approaches during their quest, and hands Han a bundle of gear. Han gives the kid's head a friendly pat, while Rufindel insists that he truly wants zero payment. Just being a sidekick and learning from Han is enough, which causes Han to give a tiny smirk. If the boy knew Han was hoarding the most legendary stones in the region, he would faint instantly. Suddenly, Han spots a fresh item inside his digital bag, a glowing sphere used for capturing video, apparently snatched when he grabbed Ellen's pouch earlier, and the game system suddenly sends him a notification, explaining that the hidden footage stored inside is now fully ready for his viewing. He flips through the recordings with a slight frown, seeing clips of rhythmic battles and lyrical wars. videos of monster territories, plus secret documents about exclusive contracts, and illegal bribes for the corrupt. As Han fits the pieces together, he finally understands why Ellen offered a fortune to control the rap scene. The mystery is solved as Yurhan appears, calling out loudly, so Han offers a short response, and Yurhan explains a secret portal hidden in the northern mountains of the massive Runia continent, run by Ellen's team of aliens, where a greedy captain is currently exploiting his power for personal wealth. Yurhan notes that he already gave the command, so once that boss leaves safety, he will be deleted. And, however, looks at the recording stone with a completely fresh and much more dangerous strategy. This is more than a video. It is blackmail material that can become a deadly tool to defeat invaders. Over at the music headquarters, the stands before the screen showing that the public hates them, voicing the insults aimed at Rantayan, ridiculing how a total nobody thinks he can suddenly start performing, as if he were royalty for possessing minor influence, causing Un's expression to contort with pure hatred. His eyeballs practically glue themselves onto that giant Yahello because some scandalous gossip is currently exploding. They outed the local juror, finally proving rumors about the baddie. He hates to say it, but Han fights like a caffeinated god, basically a walking nuke. However, why on earth would that lunatic tickle the mosaic dragon, effectively turning every living soul against him? According to Bayan, labeling yourself a supreme jerk is simply a creative method for burning all connections. The protagonist didn't simply annoy the mosaic crowd, he actually offended Ellen's strange Martian group as well. Surely Ellen wanted to just munch popcorn and watch. Once those high-tier Martians begin their vengeful march, the sheep shall follow. Hyun unscoots his chair back, looking grim, because raw muscles have their limits. Soo-hyun must travel across oceans via magic gates, shut them down, and our boy is basically grounded. If those Martians ban his garage sales, he becomes just another penniless wanderer with 0 gold coins. Precisely when that gloomy epiphany strikes home, some trade notification flickers upon that Olympus screen like a strobe. Fresh news appears, showing that mythical obsidian rock finally crawled out from hiding. Squints intensely toward that glass, attempting to process this absolute nonsense using his tired brain. If that rascal Han owns such a relic, this digital sandbox is officially getting way more chaotic than expected. Rumors fly faster than a crazy pig. That dark rock returned, apparently chilling within the Korean server. Everyone instantly goes bananas, wondering if the auction price will cost a kidney or two. This comeback is a total tremor. That obsidian rock is currently making journalists and bankers shake with fear. Moguls are screaming for updates, vowing to snag the scoop, even if they bankrupt their entire company. Within the big boss headquarters, the air gets prickly and awkward when a lowly intern delivers the news. The owner of that pebble says no, which was a rude rejection. That motive is hilariously petty, belonging to the same chaotic dude who triggered the previous disaster. He simply despises Nova immensely, making the boss's face turn a lovely shade of purple. Currently, a buff dude with no logic holds that gem like a greedy toddler, which completely ruins the party for everyone. Meanwhile, deep within the digital simulation, Siat is quietly fuming, reading a mountain of digital trash talk about her sibling. Her brain refuses to accept this. Every single story is filled with lies and very creative insults. She is absolutely livid, seeing that his tiny fan club has basically evaporated into thin air. The main man browses the gossip with a bored face, since he expected this circus all along. Vibrating like a broken phone, plants a nearby oak until the poor plant loses those green leaves. He observes her silently, noting that her rage is a complete waste of effort. Her weary voice snaps back, and she vows to make every journalist regret their life choices in a courtroom. Sesum lingers nearby, squeezing her hands, unable to reconcile the chill guy she sees with the beast described by the press. An takes it all in, questioning if he ever actually did anything impressive enough to earn such blind loyalty from her. Anyway, those philosophical musings are currently on the back burner. Character assassination was bound to happen, especially since Nova and Ellen treated him like the ultimate final boss. Dealing with these annoying news cycles is just a Tuesday for him, yet the general consensus remains irrelevant. He no longer cares, as he possesses the dark pebble and plans to huck it to whichever whale pays most, regardless of their offers. Those losers will never manage to pry it from his cold, greedy fingers properly. The big sale begins, as hordes of shoppers pack into the crusty old stadium located on the Centennial mainland. The crew's outdoors are vibrating with salt, mainly because Nova and Eileen broke all the fast travel portals. Clearly they wanted to keep the treasure trapped, but Han cleverly worked with Certain to reveal the venue only minutes before starting. Hanging out with the squad, he reviews the blueprint, while feeling confident that the tactical advice from Certain is absolutely solid. People are actually following the ridiculous rules without whining, purely because nobody wants to get kicked into the sun. Defense is tighter than skinny jeans, and guards grab every single weapon at the entrance door. Just a handful of disciplined soldiers stay within the walls, acting like very serious statues under very strict commands. Old impartial dudes watch the crowd, while spinning blades of certain doom surround the floor to keep things civil. Regulations are set in stone, and any attempt at a fistfight leads to an immediate and rather gross expiration. A public list of banned losers is displayed, which is a great way to make them super salty. Those angry outcasts will surely seek revenge later, but for now, the loudspeaker announces the terms of the bidding war. The atmosphere inside is buzzing like a beehive as the main man finally walks out to the middle stage. He offers a chilly welcome, says sorry for the invasive pat-downs, and clarifies that he only accepts shiny gold coins. There is no base cost, so people can offer whatever, and someone immediately screams a bid of 600 billion. Prices soar fast, jumping from 700 billion to 800 billion in seconds. The total hits 860 billion, climbing like it found its parents' credit card. He keeps a mental count, watching it cross 1 trillion before hitting the 2 trillion mark. It is crazy that a tiny rock causes such global chaos, but then the actual bombshell of the night is dropped. A random voice suddenly bids 30 trillion gold, leaving everyone in total shock. The entire stadium goes silent as everyone stares at the bidder named Randall. He is an obscenely wealthy tycoon who basically owns the Faria region over on the Middle Eastern server side. Those basement dwellers rarely venture outside, so his presence and mountain of gold really hurt the wallet. A random dude dives in with 31 trillion, repeating his bid with the pride of a stubborn donkey. Randall doesn't blink, casually bumping the price tag up to 50 trillion shiny coins. That smirk displays massive ego, as he watches things unfold from the cheap seats. Searchin is totally convinced that the bidding war is going to wrap up right here and now. Ending this fancy master auction at that massive price point seems like a done deal, honestly. But Han isn't finished playing games. He demands more cash, scanning the crowd like a hungry vulture. Searchin narrows his eyes, waiting for the shy big spenders to finally crawl out of their holes. Suddenly everything goes sideways when Illumi yells that the devil is coming to gut them all, giggling like a maniac while holding a spacey bomb in his hands. Our main man pivots toward the screaming and immediately knows those goons belong to Novus Circus. The nutjob screeches about doing this for the Dark Lord before tossing the bomb at the spectators. Han recalls the heads up from Searchin. The preacher wants total chaos. That is the whole point. Plot up the travel lanes from other continents by tagging warp spots with bad mojo, then try explosions. Suicidal kabooms meant to spark panic and frame the party as a cult massacre. How very original. Han realizes at this very second just how accurate those predictions about the idiots actually were. He bellows for Yirhan, as fear spreads like wildfire. Yirhan begins moving with some serious lethality, materializing behind a villain. He terminates them instantly, his aura cutting through the panic like a razor. It confuses our star player how perfectly these clowns follow the script that Searchin wrote for them. Down to every single pathetic detail. Their sabotage lands well, but was expected. Let the real scrap begin.